Michelle providing the backdrop. Chris Froome begins his bid for a third yellow jersey in Paris as Nairo Quintana aims for his first, and Alberto Contador is searching for a return to his brilliant best. Hello and welcome to the 103rd edition of the Tour de France. This is Matthew Keenan with you. The Abbey is the setting for the Grand Depart as Froome looks to repeat his feats of 2013 and 15. Last year it was a battle between he and the Colombian, and it came down to a last rage towards the top of Alpe d'Huez, where Froome had enough to hold on. Quintana managed to secure second. It was critical for Froome in 2015. It will in 2016 as well. Starting in La Manche in the Normandy region, crosswinds will be a major factor. The journey south then commences with some long stages through into Limoges, the home of Raymond Poulidor. The first of the mountain stages arrive on stages 7, 8 and then 9. The first of the mountaintop finishes into Andorra. A rest day, opportunity for the sprinters. Mont Ventoux on Bastille Day, and then the race journeys into Switzerland as the final 5 stages before heading into Paris are certainly in favour of the mountain men. 2 individual time trials, one of them is a mountain time trial. It's a challenging tour to say the least. Day 1, it starts at Mont Saint-Michel, and it's a stage of 188 kilometres as the journey makes its way through to Youdar Beach, the home of the landings on the 6th of June 1944 for D-Day, a significant commemoration this afternoon. 2 Category 4 climbs early in the race for the purse of the King of the Mountains jerseys. 1 intermediate sprint as always on stages in the Tour de France, and then it's through to the finish itself. It's actually relatively uncomplicated at the finish, which adds to the complication. There'll be a real battle to try and get to the front of the race. The sprinters for the stage victory, the yellow jersey also up for grabs. And for those that are aiming to get the final yellow jersey, they'll want to be up the front as well and staying out of trouble. The weather conditions today, a little difficult to predict. They'll ebb and flow throughout the day. Sunny, cloudy and spots of rain also forecast. Temperatures to exceed 17 degrees, perhaps much more than that. The wind will be the greatest point of interest for the riders when they were looking at the forecast last night and this morning. Wind averaging around about 20 to 30 kilometres per hour, with gusts up to 55 kilometres per hour towards the back end of the stage. We're inside the final minute before the race rolls away. The neutral zone before racing gets underway proper in almost 30 minutes' time. The world champion Peter Sagan at the front, along with 3 of the locals at the front of the race. 3 riders coming from the region, getting the chance to go right to the very front of the peloton before they roll away. Adam Hansen also at the front, starting and aiming to finish his 15th Grand Tour in a row. Alberto Contador looking relaxed, but probably a little pensive as well. They roll away for the start of the 103rd edition of the Tour de France, but there's some formalities to get at 12:50 local time, which is just on 29 minutes away. A chance to adore the magnificent Mont Saint-Michel. Dates back to 966. Extraordinary history, and we'll get an opportunity later on to take a closer look at it. 198 riders in the race across 22 teams, 9 riders per team, and there's been a few jersey changes to pick up throughout the race. As we look at Nairo Quintana, the 2nd place finisher in his only 2 appearances at the Tour, 2013 and 15. He's ridden the race twice. His worst result is 2nd. As he speaks with Alberto Contador, a man who has won this race twice, 2007 and 2009, but the last time Contador won a stage of the Tour de France was indeed back in 2009, 7 years ago. It seems like such a long time for Alberto Contador, given all the other success that he's had in the meantime. A calm Nairo Quintana, but the one thing that will provide him with a little bit of concern, no doubt, will be the crosswinds towards the back end of today's stage. In fact, throughout the majority of today's stage, to be perfectly fair, as they go all the way up along the coast, they're expected to be hit by winds from left to right. The Cannondale team, now known as Cannondale Drapac, you can see that little bit of red that adorns the jersey of the American team. It's now a part Australian team. Michael Drapac, who has been supporting cycling in Australia since around about 2003, has made the step up. He's joined forces with Slipstream Sport, the group headed up by Jonathan Vaughters, and is now a part sponsor of that squad. The Abbey of Mont Saint-Michel, a chance to take a look at it from above. Contador won't be doing any touristic visits today, nor will he have done so throughout the past few days. It's business time for Alberto Contador. Michael Chirel is the rider that's alongside him from AG2R Le Mondial. Italian being the second language of Peter Sagan, English third. And it was his first appearance at the Tour de France 5 years ago that really inspired Peter Sagan to work on his English because of, understandably, the amount of attention that he received. He won 3 stages in his debut at the Tour and won the green jersey. Thomas de Gendt in the red colours for Lotto Soudal, a former third place finisher at the Giro d'Italia. But his role at this year's Tour de France, it won't be aiming for the general classification. His role here will be aiming to get the yellow jersey for the Lotto Soudal squad today. Stage 1, Andre Greipel, their big sprinter, one of the key favourites to collect the honours this afternoon. In fact, it's an incredibly strong team built around Andre Greipel. Effectively, the whole squad is supporting the German sprinter, and perhaps it's only really Tony Galopin, the Frenchman, with some freedom to go elsewhere. The pre-race favourite, Chris Froome. Trying to eavesdrop on the conversation between Adam Hansen and Chris Froome. They look very calm. The tide here is quite a dramatic tide. It goes out 10 kilometres and comes back in. It moves relatively quickly. They've got to get the timing right to be able to have the stage go to the foot of Mont Saint-Michel. And the bridge that you can see that's been built there, it took some 10 years to construct, and it was just being finished at the time the Tour de France came here back in 2013, when it was an individual time trial that was won by the triple world champion Tony Martin. Just 44 people live on this little island. What a stunning place to live. Fortified walls that enclosed the village back in the 14th and the 15th century. The English attempted to capture it throughout the 100 Years' Wars, but their relentless attacks, invasions, were unsuccessful. Not sure if you can overhear some of the riders, but I can actually hear them, and they're not too complimentary of how this has been organised. Didn't think it was the best of ideas to bring the vehicles down here, as it's going to be very difficult for them to make the U-turn and get behind the peloton. Some relaxed, experienced-looking riders, and some a little pensive. 33 first-timers in this year's tour, and one of them is a genuine contender for a top 10 or even a top 5 finish, Fabio Aru, the team leader for the Astana squad. And he's got some good support with Vincenzo Nibali, who won this race in 2014 and is fresh off having won the Giro d'Italia. Not that I'm sure fresh is the right word. Maybe he's fatigued off winning the Giro d'Italia. Time will tell how he's been able to recover. We've certainly seen the evidence last year of Alberto Contador, who won the Giro d'Italia just ahead of Fabio Aru, came to the Tour with high ambitions of trying to do the double. But the effects of 2 Grand Tours in one season caught up with him, and he ended up finishing in 5th position here last year. Towards the front for Edix Quick-Step. Today's stage is their big German sprinter, Marcel Kittel. Gold shoes of Peter Sagan, barely noteworthy given that they seem so appropriate. season about the string of second-place finishes for Peter Sagan, and he had so many at the Tour de France last year, which arguably made him even more popular than if he had have won all those stages. 3,535 kilometres between the peloton and Paris in the final yellow jersey. It's all about to get underway. The race director, Christian Prudhomme, is on the horn. The flag has been waved, about to get into the lead car as the race is underway. Lee Howard of the IM cycling team was the first to try and attack. Now the reaction has come fiercely, and it's the Cannondale Drapac team going off the front early in the race, with the reaction coming from Thomas Voeckler of Direct Energy. There are no surprises there. This is Lee Howard. He's debuting the Tour de France, and he manages to get himself off the front within the first few metres. A flick of the elbow. He's looking for some cooperation. And happy to try and close things down. And three teams to note towards the front. Katusha, the red colours with the K. The other red colours, Thomas de Gent wearing those for Lotto Soudal. And also the Dimension Data team, the teammates of Mark Cavendish. They're pretty happy with the composition of that breakaway, clearly, and they're hoping to see that small group go away, and then they can contain things for the rest of the race. And in fact, it's not Thomas Voeckler that's trying to go across. It's a different team entirely. It is the Fortunato Vital Concept team trying to come across to Alex Howes from the Cannondale Drapac squad. And the three riders at the front now assessing the situation, seeing that two more riders are about to come across. They'll be hearing on race radio, courtesy of their team cars, that the peloton is pretty happy with the composition of this group. So perhaps they'll be thinking about waiting for the other two to join them, make it a group of five to build up their lead even further. Well, the peloton pretty calm and fairly content with the composition of this group that is drifting off the front. I must confess, I was expecting a fiercer battle to try and get into the breakaway. And they're already out to a 36-second lead. It won't take too much longer before that really does start to build up. You can see the conversation at the front as they check across the shoulder to make the decision on whether to wait or, as if Jan Bader is the one who is calling the shots for the Bora Argon team. Paul Voss it is who is with him, and Lee Howard, the man who started it all. So on his debut in the Tour de France, he gets the distinction of being the first rider to attack in the 2016 edition of the race. Billy's reputation early in his career really as a sprinter, Lee Howard. And he burst onto the scene in 2010 when he managed to win a stage at the Tour of Oman ahead of the likes of Tom Bonen and Fabian Cancellara. It was a big win for Lee Howard, and huge things were expected of him. And it feels as if it's taking a while for him to really get going and fulfill that hope, that potential that many believed he held. It's easy to forget that he's still just 26 years of age, so he's got plenty of time. All calm in the peloton. One of the great features of the Tour de France is the amount of camper vans that we see following the race. And many of them you see more than once. Mont Saint-Michel off in the distance. We'll get a chance to see that a few more times throughout today's stage before we make it to the finish at Utah Beach, as there are plenty of opportunities on a clear day to look back and see it from various points throughout Normandy. Not too many high up. Time for a drink for Mark Renshaw from Dimension Data, hoping to get Mark Cavendish back to the top of the podium as a stage winner. Marcel Kittel in the blue colours of edX Quick-Step, the big favourite for today's stage. Twice before, when the race has started with a road stage as opposed to a prologue, it's Kittel who's managed to win the stage, collect the yellow jersey, and he said he's tried to put it out of his mind, the fact that the yellow jersey is up for grabs once again, but he would dearly like that yellow jersey. 2 minutes and 30 seconds, already the advantage for the two riders from Bora Argon 18, Jan Barter and Paul Voss, along with the Australian Lee Howard of IM Cycling. He's more than justified his late call-up to the team. It was only through injury and illness of one of his teammates who was in sparkling form that Lee Howard got his chance. He got the call on Wednesday. I'm sure it's one of the best phone calls he's received throughout his career. Luis Angel Mate is the rider from the Cofidis team in the centre of the picture. They've had a disappointing non-starter, Nasser Bouhanni. An incident that beggars the belief. On the eve of the French National Championships, he got himself in a fight with somebody that was in the naming room in his apartment, ended up with 4 stitches in his hand. It wasn't treated properly at the time, and now he finds himself unable to start the tour. And he has been the big investment for the Cofidis team across the past 2 seasons. And he had a number of crashes leading up to last year's Tour de France, which resulted in him not being able to deliver on expectations. Here come the 2 chasers. They should be able to make it across. Alex Howes is the rider from the Cannondale Drapac team. Already been a fall in the peloton, the first fall, and it is the debutant. No, it's not. I thought it was Fabio Aru momentarily, but it wasn't. It was his lookalike, Diego Rosa, who went down from the Astana squad. And Diego Rosa, one of the other 33 riders riding the tour for the first time. This is Julien Vermont at the front for the edX Quick-Step team, followed by Thomas De Gendt. The teams of the sprinters early, asserting their authority and just trying to contain that breakaway group of 5. And a touch of wheels. It was Diego Rosa who touched the wheel of the rider in front of him, who was from Dimension Data, and went down, thankfully, wasn't going too quickly at that point. I say that from the comfort of the commentary tribune. And here comes the chase, trying to... Anthony De La Place from Fortuneo Vital Concept, who is one of the locals. The finish line tomorrow is just 10 kilometres from his house. He's riding the Tour de France now for the 5th time. When he made his debut in 2011, he had the distinction of being the youngest rider in the race. Obviously, that's no longer the case, but at 26, he's already got plenty of experience in the tour. He's the same age as Lee Howard, Howard riding for the 1st time, De La Place for the 5th time. Good to see the Cannondale Drapac colours off the front. New sponsor, Michael Drapac, the man behind Drapac Capital, is at the race watching the Tour de France with effectively his team in the race for the 1st time. No surprises to see the teams who are at the front controlling affairs. edX Quick-Step, along with Lotto Soudal, teams that have a great rivalry, but also they've got a lot of alliances in the earlier part of the stage, but those alliances are broken once they get to the back end of the stage, and the battle really heats up to try and win. Can't help but wonder what sort of an impact that early crash for Diego Rosa will have put through the peloton. Just a reminder, as if they needed any, of all the risks that are involved in such a race. The Normans, then the domain of the Bretons, and the Vikings raided through here and controlled the area from 907 through to 937. And the church that you saw in the centre of town, the Notre Dame des Champs, it's a Gothic revival style. It was actually a reconstruction of the original church and was rebuilt back in the 19th century. Lee Howard making the most of the descent. He's got good bike handling skills, Lee Howard. He's been a multiple world champion on the track, including in the Madison, which is basically the relay race of cycling. 2 of you, one in the race at a time, hand slings to put the other one into the race, and it is not for the faint-hearted. And Lee Howard's been the world champion in that discipline.
No, you've really got to have eyes in the back of your head and all round your head as well in the Madison. You've really got to have your wits about you in that track event. And guys who are good at that are also generally really good tactically on the road, and they're very aware of what's going on around them. So Lee Howard, not such a problem today. He knows what's going on around him. There's only 2 other guys been with him all stage, so won't be spending a lot of time in the bunch in his very first Tour de France, at least on stage 1.
On stage 1 only. This is Daniel Tekle-Hamenot, the Eritrean national champion, just adjusting the hair underneath the helmet. And he's a man last year who created some history in African cycling, becoming the first Eritrean to start and finish the race. He was one of 2. Mahawi Kudos was also with him. In fact, there's 2 Eritreans again in the race this year. Natnel Bahan is also starting the race. But last year, Tekle-Hamenot, he had the King of the Mountains jersey, and he became the biggest sporting hero in Eritrea. It was a beautiful moment. He's a guy that you know reasonably well because he spent a couple of seasons with the Orica Bike Exchange team.
Yeah, that's right. When we were both with, at the time, the Green Edge team when it first started, even before Orica was announced, I was Daniel Tekle-Hamenot's first roommate. So when we were in the team camp at the end of the 2011 season, we were in Melbourne. I roomed with Dan, and one thing that people will have become aware of as they got to know Daniel Tekle-Hamenot is he's always smiling. He has got the broadest grin in the bunch, and whenever you see him, he's just so happy to be a part of professional cycling. And I saw him, I bumped into him at the press centre in Saint-Lô the other day, and again that big grin, just so happy to be at the Tour de France after such a fantastic experience last year where he wore the King of the Mountains jersey for a few days.
And he feels a real sense of responsibility representing his people, so to speak, as he puts it, and he does it so well. He certainly did last year's Tour de France, and that smile, it's nearly as infectious as the smile of Esteban Chavez, the Colombian from the Orica Bike Exchange team. Paul Voss in the time trial position. Well, he's not waiting.
Maybe he has now decided to go on. He sort of wasn't really getting into it over the top of that climb in Avranches as we look down on the peloton making their way up the climb. Now at 4 minutes and 43 behind our leader. But Voss, he's probably had communication with the team director who said, listen, push on, make sure you get it, because if you don't take the next one, and Lee Howard does, and he beats you at the finish, it's all been for nothing. So push on, try and get on through to that next climb, which is also category 4, of course, the Côte de Falaise de Champeux. It's not shampoo, it's Champeux. And it's, I actually just drove over it after we finished our ride. We finished our ride just before that point and went over on the motorbike, and plenty of people up there too. The crowds are really out in force. You can see on the screen. Also in Avranches, the French people, and particularly those of La Manche region, are so happy to see the Tour de France start in their region, and they really are out in force.
There's also plenty of American tourists that are here at the race that I've had the chance to see over the last few days, doing the tour of all the beaches from the D-Day landings. And we'll get a chance later in the stage to go through some of that extraordinary history from back in 1944. And a couple of days ago, I had the opportunity to just take a walk along Utah Beach. And it's hard to comprehend. And they've got a memorial there where there's also a museum at Utah Beach, just 100 metres from where the finish line is today. And there's a U-boat with a statue of 3 soldiers charging out of the U-boat. And by that point in 1944, all the allure of the World War I, early part of the recruitment and the adventure of going to the other side of the world, that was well and truly blown out of the water, literally. And the reality of war was clearly there in 1944. And the thought of, we're going to be in these boats, we're heading to the beach, the Germans are already there, and you're going to jump out and charge towards the shores. It's a frightening thought. It really is. And this is a memorial to General Patton, George Smith Patton, who was one of the leaders throughout World War II. He also served in World War I, but he is best known for his leadership of the US Army throughout the Allied invasion of Normandy in June of 1944. Before that, actually, General Patton went to the Olympic Games in 1912 as a modern pentathlete. And he was a great sword fighter, and he used to teach a lot of sword fighting within the army before going on to World War I and then World War II. But he was also famous for his philosophy on inspiring the troops with vulgar-ridden speeches and leading with an offensive attack. And he is well remembered by the French, who were delighted that he made his presence felt here in France back in June of 1944. He also led the charge throughout the Mediterranean and the invasion of Casablanca, likewise the Allied invasion into Sicily. So he's a man with an extraordinary military record.
Just before the top of the climb, so I was looking out to see some of the people that I rode with in there, some of them on the right-hand side, having a look at the riders come past. So thanks to the guys from UPS for a great ride today. But I think they'll be marvelling at the speed that these guys are able to ride up that hill, because a lot of those guys I was with this morning were suffering.
Voss out of the saddle. He's in a big gear. He's using the big chainring at the front. He's muscling his way to the top. He'll be going anaerobic at this point. He knows how much power he can produce and for how long he can sustain it. And there's nothing that he can do about the chase from behind. At this point, he's riding to the numbers, flirting with his threshold, hoping it's enough to collect one more point in the King of the Mountains jersey.
I don't think he's riding to any numbers anymore. I think he's riding to the pain level that he can tolerate, right up into the point where he's about to blow up, but just not quite. Look, mouth open, out of the saddle, back and falling back into the seat again, squeezing every little bit out for that one solitary point, because he knows that is his ticket to the podium when he gets here to Utah Beach at the end of the day. No matter what happens in the crosswinds, no matter if he gets dropped, he'll be on the podium and he'll be in polka dots.
And you can see all those shirts on the side of the road. The publicity caravan has come through 2 hours in advance. Carrefour is the sponsor of the King of the Mountains classification. They've thrown the T-shirts out to the spectators, and they're cheering on Paul Voss to get to the top, collect another points, and move to the lead of the King of the Mountains classification. Voss is almost there. We'd love to take a look across the shoulder and see what is happening with the chase. It was Alex Howes of Cannondale Drapac who was the one trying to close it down.
He's weaving from left to right as he goes up. He's changing gears constantly, in and out of the saddle, and there it is finally.
He's made it to the top. Paul Voss has survived. He collects another point, and it's almost like a stage victory. He sits up as if he has won the stage, and now will wait for the rest of his breakaway companions, but he's required at the podium presentation at the end of the day. Lee Howard again across the top in second position, but no prize today for Lee Howard.
Well, Lee Howard being more of a sprinter, he wouldn't be, I think, that familiar with how the mountains competition works, especially in the Tour de France, which he's also never ridden. He wouldn't have been aware that there's only 1 point for the winner and nothing for second, so it makes no difference coming across the line in second. And Paul Voss, I'm sure now he'd be looking forward to just going back, sitting in the wheels, taking a little bit of a break before starting to contribute again to this breakaway and trying to build their gap back out. As we now see, it's fallen under 4 minutes to the peloton. 3 minutes 50 for our 5 leaders. Any second now they'll be back together with 148 kilometres to go. Frank Schleck seemed to have something stuck in the derailleur.
And he was just advised by Shane Archbold from the Bora Argon 18 team, another one of the Kiwis in the race, one of 3 New Zealanders in this year's race. Good to see him making his debut.
The man known as the Flying Mullet, due to his neck hair, as they call it in some parts of Europe.
He's got a haircut straight out of 1987.
He must have watched Dirty Dancing and become a fan of Patrick Swayze.
It's right up there with Patrick, isn't it? Frank Schleck, the man who finished in 3rd place in the Tour de France in 2011 when Cadel Evans went out the winner. It was his brother Andy in 2nd position. Andy, the younger of the Schleck brothers, has been retired now for a couple of years and owns and operates a bike shop in Luxembourg.
Andy himself a winner of the Tour de France.
Indeed, in 2010.
From 2nd place when Alberto Contador was stripped of the title. So the Schlecks with a great record in the Tour de France. And unfortunately, Andy succumbed to a knee injury that was recurring and he could not get it better and decided to call it a day and hang up the wheels, which came as quite a surprise for such a young guy to not persevere longer and try and get things right. But okay, I don't know the full extent of the injury, but did seem a bit strange to hang it up so quickly.
Can't help but wonder whether there'll be lingering regrets when he gets into his 40s and it's all too late. Paulo Tiralongo for the Astana team, controlling affairs for them and making sure that they protect their team leader, Fabio Aru, who's making his debut at the race after having won the Tour of Spain last year. Michael Matthews, he is one of the contenders for the stage tomorrow, and Michael Matthews, riding for the Orica Bike Exchange team, is well aware of the main challenges for today's stage. A fast finisher, perhaps not quite quick enough to contend with Kittel and Cavendish, but tomorrow he is certainly one of the favourites. For the increase in the tempo, and you can see how frantic it is, 10 kilometres to the intermediate sprint, but that seems insignificant. Tosato at the front, and there's been a fall.
Contador.
Alberto Contador. It is Alberto Contador with a lot of skin off on the right-hand side. That is disastrous for Contador. The whole season based around this race, and Contador, it might be over before it barely gets started. They won't be waiting for him. It was his teammate Tosato who was right on the front, and he'll have heard it.
And I think maybe Contador was taken out by another rider on the inside. It was one of the BMC riders there.
Marcus Burkhardt.
With the yellow shoes, Burkhardt. I'm not sure if there was a tangle of handlebars. They came around the corner. But tragedy has struck for Alberto Contador. Going down at this point in the Tour, at any point in the Tour, is bad. On day one like this, with crosswinds like there is today, let's just hope he's okay and can get himself back to the bunch and there's no real damage. But he's jersey is completely torn apart.
Well, there's no urgency in the chase. His team riders, his teammates, they're waiting for him. They're trying to encourage Alberto to get going, but Alberto is showing no signs at this point of really opening up the throttle. He's currently just trying to do the assessment, bike change. That's the first of the assessments. Next is, how is he physically?
And the question is now, what do his rivals do? Does the peloton now ease up? They will have heard what's happened behind. Or do they take advantage of the situation? We saw Alberto Contador take advantage once when Andy Schleck dropped his chain. Is this a similar situation? Will they keep going? And look at Alberto Contador here. Hopefully his jersey is the worst of his injuries, but definitely skin off. This is Geraint Thomas.
Well, he celebrated the 3-1 win for Wales last night, but he's not celebrating this afternoon. Looking for the team car for the bike change. Problems for Geraint here. Rear wheel puncher. Just a change of the rear wheel, and it's the neutral service from Mavic. Unfortunately, Geraint Thomas has got no ambitions of his own, and the good news for the Welshman is that Froome has avoided the trouble.
So Alberto Contador, following his bodyguard Matteo Tosato around that bend, was just a few positions behind him, didn't quite make it into the wheel to get around that bend, and maybe took a bit of a risk to try and get around the corner and back into the wheel of Tosato, but then came undone. And unfortunately for him, as he went down, there was a traffic island right in the middle of the road, and his right shoulder took the brunt of that fall as he crashed into the traffic island. His team now dropped back. Team time trial mode now to try and bring Alberto Contador back to the peloton.
And they're now being caught by the group with Danny Navarro is the rider in the red colours from Cofidis. He was not involved in the fall. He missed the split. This is Matteo Tosato now who's dropping back. If Alberto had been following the bodyguard, he would have been safe.
And it doesn't. Peloton, look at that long line on the right of screen, all trying to get themselves up to that arrowhead. You look at them spread across the road at the front, but at the back it's panic stations trying to get back. And is the pace going out at the front? It looks like it is. A lot of discussion now going on at the front between Lotto, Katusha, Movistar, Ethics Quickstep, so the pace really come off. So it looks to be, fortunately for Alberto Contador, the peloton is sitting up and will allow them to come back fairly easily, but it'll all depend on what the damage is to the Spanish former Tour champion.
Well, it's been 7 years since Alberto Contador has won a stage at the Tour de France. That was back in 2009, the second time he won the race overall. Yet, understandably so, we always talk about him as a contender to win the race. If he gets back to this group, which judging by the composition of the peloton, the way it's starting to fan out, I think he will get back to this group. Frank Schleck, I should say, is the rider that has gone towards the front to slow things down.
Well, who I saw there was Fabian Cancellara, one of, you would say, the patron of the peloton, one of the elder statesmen now of the peloton. his final year, but he's always been a rider to observe the etiquette, the unspoken and unwritten rules. And he would have got himself to the front and said, hey, this is a moment when we wait. You don't do that to each other. And I think he's right too. 75 kilometres to go. I don't think it's the right thing to keep going on with it and to Contador's disadvantage. Other people may disagree, but that's my point of view, and I'd say it's Fabian Cancellara's as well.
So if Alberto Contador makes it back and he has no broken bones and it's just skin off, that crash has still cost him the chance of winning the Tour de France. Because his body is not just recovering from the physical effort, it's trying to mend all that. Lost the Tour de France in 2008. It was not up Alpe d'Huez when Carlos Sastre won. It wasn't on the time trial before they hit Paris. It was the crash that he had on about stage 9 and all the skin he lost. He just fatigued a little bit more than Carlos, who had no problems throughout the race, as Cadel was trying to recuperate from the strain of racing and from the crash. And Alberto is going to find himself in exactly that position this year.
It certainly makes it very, very difficult indeed. It's one thing to recover from the race, but to be recovering from injuries. And, well, I hope for Alberto it is just skin and not something more structural.
The good sign is he's out of the saddle. So he's got some weight on the shoulder, he's got some weight on the collarbone, and the wrist is carrying the weight as well. So in terms of bones, it looks okay. In terms of grimace, that's enormous.
But he'll be quite relieved to be already in amongst the cars. He's got a lot of his teammates there, and he will see the peloton up in front of him. And he will have been told the peloton's sitting up, so don't panic too much. Come back and then get those wounds seen to straight away, because the last thing you need, you can ask Buani this, is a wound that's not treated properly that then gets infected as they now come through 5 kilometres to the sprint. The question now is, does the peloton and the sprinters teams want to ramp things back up, go for maximum points at the intermediate sprint? They'll have to catch the breakaway, which is now slipping back out to 40 seconds, re-establishing a lead because the peloton has sat up.
Well, that's where I thought he was quite lucky in terms of being able to get back to the peloton, because there's lots of others in the race whose race doesn't concern Contador. Like, well, Peter Sagan, one of his teammates, who's going for the green jersey. We note that Sagan didn't go back to collect him, the world champion, because he's got his own ambitions. And others are there thinking about that green jersey as well. So that just naturally increases the tempo. But now that Alberto has returned, the truce will be over.
Be a good way to run the competition. Win a stage, you're active. You're on, you're in it for green.
So with your second places in the battle for green behind Eric Zabel, that would elevate you to how many green jerseys?
I'm not sure. I actually haven't thought about it.
Oh, I thought we were going with the old Paul Keating, the former Australian Prime Minister, statement of always back self-interest. At least you know it's trying.
No, I don't go for woulda, coulda, shouldas with myself and my own career. That's how it was then. But I'd like to see the rule come in, because I think it'll make it a lot more interesting, a lot more at stake.
Well, there's 1 kilometre to go before they collect the first points in the race for the green jersey, which you've won 3 times.
Now, Lee Howard, he missed out on the mountain points. He tried to keep Barta and Voss under control going to the first climb, but now he's in his territory. Will he be able to wrap up the points? On paper, he's by far the fastest of this group.
Lee Howard will win this intermediate sprint to collect the 20 points as a mark of honour. 500 metres to go. De La Place at the front, followed by Lee Howard. It's then Alex Howes and Jan Barta at the back. Jan Barta's going to take a flyer. He wants the points. And Lee Howard, is he going to respond? Yes, he is. Howard picks up the slipstream of the big check. It's Barta who is at the front. Lee Howard is closing down. Alex Howes has drifted off the wheel. So too is De La Place. Barta looking to collect all the intermediate prizes for Bora Argon 18. Howard checks across the shoulder, and now Howard goes, making his bid to collect the 20 points. Lee Howard, bienvenue on Le Tour de France. On debut, he collects 20 points in the race for green.
Nice job, Lee Howard. Well spotted. I thought for a moment he's going to get surprised here. He's not going to even be having a look. Right at that second, I was almost going to say it. Looked over his shoulder. As we look now at the peloton coming through, Marcel Kittel starts to signal his intentions. Andre Greipel takes him on. Greipel takes maximum points from the peloton just ahead of Marcel Kittel, who for me was not even out of third gear.
It was a sprint of who can use the least amount of energy to get the maximum points. It was a very conservative sprint without trying to give too much away or spending too much energy. And Contador is now in the hands of the race doctor. Looks like Leo Sayer. It's not going to be a comfortable night's sleep for Alberto.
No, he'll certainly be sleeping on the left side tonight, Alberto Contador. He gets his shoulder patched up. And, well, the medical team from the Tour de France, they're very accustomed to fixing injuries and dealing with incidences like this on the go. And they not only will have given it a bit of a clean out and disinfected at the moment, but as soon as Alberto's off the bike, they'll be doing that again. Probably his own team doctor will be the one doing it, making sure that every bit of grit and dirt is out of that wound and out of any others. You can't afford, when you crash in a race, to not treat any tiny little mark. And I'm speaking from experience because I once had a crash in Belgium where we did all the major wounds, shoulder, hip, knee, buttocks, the whole lot. It was excruciating. And there was one on my ankle. And they said, and that one there? I said, it's okay, it's already dried up, it's fine. That's where I got an infection. It ended up ruling me out of the Giro d'Italia, which was 2 weeks later, because I got so sick. So you've got to really go over the whole body. It's like when you go and hire a car, you've got to walk around and check the damage. If you see something, take care of it and say it. Same as an injury. If you see it, take care of it, because it'll be the one that comes back and bites you.
Otherwise, you pay later. Good analogy. I like it. Matteo Tessato, I should say, and Metje Bodnar, the two riders waiting with Alberto Contador, who was getting heavily strapped up. Well, that didn't quite work. Let's have another go at it. De La Place plows away at the front, raising the stakes as a local hero. The Aussie flag for the Aussie that won the intermediate sprint, Lee Howard. Alex Howes is next in line in the green colours of the Cannondale Drapac squad. And then it is Jan Barter in the black colours of Bora Argon 18. So with 49.3 kilometres to go, let's now head across to Paul Sherwin and Phil Liggett to take you through to the finish.
Thank you very much indeed, Matt, and also to Robbie there. Have brought us now to 49 kilometres to go from the finish. As we're watching a peloton now, a little bit bemused by the fact that Contador's already had one nasty fall in this race when it was barely 3 hours old. He's all bandaged up and he's still in the race, of course, and they're saying it's just multiple abrasions. Same with Brent Buckwalter, who fell with him. But Paul, this breakaway now is going to have to concentrate on the 58-second gap to the two front runners.
Yes, but 58 seconds, Phil, at speeds like this, this is around about a kilometre. I think the main field have pretty much got that breakaway group pegged. They have been in the breakaway since kilometre zero, so they're going to be reasonably easy to pull it down towards the end, because although we're looking at 50 kilometres to go to the finish, that last 50 kilometres, we'll see the main field touching speeds in excess of 55 kilometres an hour, I think, just because of the fact that we're going to pick up an advantage from the tailwind, and then down towards the end a little bit of a nasty crosswind too. Used to the dangers of the day, they now realise it's going to get just a little bit more hairy as they start to move inland into the headwind, head down towards Sainte-Mère-Église, and then they will line up. And that's the interesting thing about today's stage. Once they start to turn left and head down towards headwind, head for the finishing line in Utah Beach, that's when they will pick up this roaring tailwind, and we'll see incredible speeds today.
Cars getting themselves back in line.
That's Van Garderen.
Yep, change of colours, but it's TJ Van Garderen. He's been back.
Well, I'm just looking at the bike there, and he doesn't have a number on his bike. And interestingly enough, TJ Van Garderen, a little story about him as well as he gets back on there with the help of... Oh, crash at the back.
Arishiro from the Lampre team on the floor here.
Well, you see, it's all nervous now, Phil. These are the moments. Look at that crash. And in fact, the accident happened because they were all slowing down to queue up to get around that right-hand corner.
And he's 6th Tour de France, Arishiro, Japanese rider. He was the first Japanese rider to take part in the Tour back in 2009. And he's always arrived in Paris. That's a very credible performance by him.
Well, he should be lucky enough to get back on here quickly, because the man who is at the front of him there in the black and red jersey, that's TJ Van Garderen, shares the leadership of Team BMC with his Australian teammate. And although, in fact, rather interesting, because Richie Porte on that squad has been given the #1 slot, 91 for Richie Porte, 99 for TJ Van Garderen. But when we spoke to both of them before the start of this race, they said, look, we're both going in as joint leaders for this team. And I think it'll actually be better for TJ Van Garderen, because it'll take a little bit of pressure off him being the sole leader of the squad. And as long as both Richie Porte and TJ Van Garderen don't have the proverbial bad day, they will both be up in the top 10 and vying and struggling to try and get themselves a podium finish in Paris. Richie Porte, I have to say, so far this year has had a great season with a fantastic performance in the Criterium de Dauphiné, even though he lost out a little bit on the final day of the race.
The kilometres are ticking off. We're exactly 10 miles, 16 kilometres from the finish. These guys know there is still a chance when there's daylight between your back wheel and the peloton. There's the 15k to go.
Well, 15 kilometres now inside of 10 miles. You know, Alex House there, he was trying to catch the referee in the red car unawares, because I think the referee's driver was going to sleep a little bit, and Alex House said, well, look, if I can just use that to get a little bit of slipstream to pull myself away, there's always this chance. He will not give up until the main field are right on his wheel. But you know, the main field, the professionals like this, Phil, they do not make mistakes, and they know how important today's stage is. They know how much of a chance they've got as a sprinter. Andre Greipel, Marcel Kittel, Mark Cavendish get across the line in first place. It's not only today, it's not a stage victory today, it's a stage victory plus a yellow jersey.
The peloton are under that same 15-kilometre banner. They're holding it 30 seconds. We're bound now for the town of Sainte-Mère-Église here, the town that played such an important pinnacle role in June 1944, where the parachutists secured the town, and 5 hours later the Americans came through, and so D-Day was on.
There's still no acceleration in the main field as they all wait for the moment. The thing is, Phil, they want to have the lead-out train, but they want to have the lead-out train that has got a lot of firepower in the final few kilometres. You've got to have 5 riders left, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then eventually you want to launch, almost catapult your leader into a sprint. Just remembering a story on the front here, Phil, of Alex House from Colorado. In fact, we talked to his team before they announced the squad. They said, okay, we'll let you know who's riding, and Alex House is riding, and he said, well, can I tell anybody, can I put it out on Twitter, because he's quite a Twitter fanatic? And they said, no, you can't tell anybody at all, it's a secret until the last moment. And then he said, well, can I tell my mum, please?
This is the town itself, Sainte-Mère-Église, and a massive crowd has turned out. They've been looking forward to this day for not literally months but years, as the riders now bring them through. The English flag flies high, back out onto the road now, which will take them straight to the finishing line. The locals were extremely worried about that left-hand bend. They thought they wouldn't get round it.
It's not far now, Phil, from that corner. This left-hand bend now is where the riders will start to pick up that very strong tailwind.
These barriers start just inside 2 kilometres from the finish line, about 1.8 kilometres to go, and that narrows the road because they haven't put them on the grass, they've put them actually on the road. Now, the most career Tour de France stage wins so far, Mark Cavendish, of course, has 26. Andre Greipel is in there with 10, and Marcel Kittel is also there. But everybody talking about Greipel. He's the rider in the white jersey on the right of the picture, coming up to 6 kilometres out.
Well, you know, one thing, Mark Cavendish has done so much in his career, Phil. He's got a big dream towards the end of this year, and that, of course, is to ride the Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro. But he's never had the yellow jersey. He's been a world champion on the track, but he has that dream of taking the yellow jersey, and as a sprinter you don't get that opportunity very often. He almost had the dream chance right in front of a home crowd, right in front of his mum when the race finished in the heart of Harrogate, and he crashed within sight of the finish line, and he was beaten by Marcel Kittel.
Exactly, and he's well aware of that. Cavendish knows his history and takes note of it. He knows this finish, he knows the sort of finish it is, he knows it's dangerous, but it's the sort of finish he loves here now. The last town before we head now in past the famous church in Sainte-Mère-Église. The left-hand turn. The road continues now. Now there's one little sweep at about 2 kilometres out. It's also the end of the breakaway. I'm sorry to say, 183 kilometres. Those two riders, with others on occasion, have led the Tour de France today.
Looks as if there's a crash at the back again. Lotto Jumbo.
Well, this was the corner that the locals were worried about, and it looks like they might have been right here. It looks as though it might be Timo Rusin.
There's a Direct Energy rider as well gone down there. This was the point that all of the team managers were talking about. You know, it's the only corner in the last 10 kilometres of this race.
So Timo Rusin, one of only 31 riders who are riding their first Tour de France this year, now sitting on the roadside here. And also gone down there. It looks as though it's number 56, I think it was, Paul. Oh, that's Timo Rusin who's gone down, yeah.
The other one is Angelo Tulic of France. More importantly now,
first-timer.
Yep, back to the front, because this is the most important part of this race now. We've got the team that have one of the greatest sprinters on the circuit, the new kid on the block, Marcel Kittel, over on the right-hand side. But the thing I feel, Phil, that the team Lotto Soudal, they have got the most experienced lead-out train, and so far we haven't seen anything of the black and white jerseys of Mark Cavendish's Dimension Data team.
No, and they've got to get him through, because it's very difficult to guide your man through. They're on the left-hand side, actually. They've got that sort of black blob from the helicopter, and the rider in the Norwegian flag there, Bosenhagen, he's on the same team as well. He's the champion again of Norway. As we switch over both sides of the road, the two big sprint teams, our two principal favourites, Kittel and Greipel, have got command at this moment in time. You can virtually feel the energy coming out of that bunch now as the sprinters try to maintain the position, let nobody else onto the game. I'm hesitating. I'm watching Greipel down there. He's trying to be pushed off his wheel. He's not having any of it.
Yes, but on the other side, there's another white jersey with bands around the middle, right on the wheel of Marcel Kittel, and that is the man we don't really regard as a pure sprinter. That, of course, Peter Sagan, but he knows how to freelance his way through a situation like this, and he has picked, I think, the wheel of Marcel Kittel for his chance to get himself a stage victory today.
Will it be the right wheel? We've been told that Peter is going to go for it today, even though we always say he's not a pure sprinter. And this is, I think, a pure sprint finish. But we'll find out as we continue into the last 2.5 kilometres to go. And Lotto Jumbo are beginning to burst onto the scene. They have a secret sprinter.
They certainly do. That's Dylan Groenewegen. He's the third-place rider on the right-hand side there. He's just recently been crowned a champion of Holland, and that's why his team has come to the front.
Wow.
This is the moment you have to have your nerves. You have to wait for the right moment to make that acceleration. But this is also the kind of sprint, Phil, where we're looking now. I told you we're going to be looking at speeds approaching 70 kilometres an hour. We're doing faster than 40 miles an hour now.
We're going to hit 50 miles an hour if we keep this up, and that's 80 kilometres an hour, because this wind, once we get in the last 2 kilometres, there's nothing, only the fields here as we head directly towards the museum on Utah Beach. And if they don't stop, then they go into La Manche. And the drive for Katusha now, their big sprinter, Alexander Kristoff, is who they're thinking of.
Yeah, Christophe, his team is the red jersey with the K right in the middle. Now, all of a sudden, Dimension Data have got themselves organised. 1, 2, 3, 4 riders from Dimension Data. It's Edvald Bosenhagen is right in there, and he's about to take over control at the front. And that, of course, is for Mark Cavendish. You've got to keep organised. We're now, the next banner they will see, Phil, will be the red kite. 1 kilometre to go to the finish, and it's going to take them at these speeds 1 kilometre in a minute.
I reckon faster, Paul, about 47, 50 seconds in that last kilometre, because they're going to get the full benefit of the wind. They're into the barriers.
I think the rider who went down from Bora Argenville was the Irish rider, Sam Bennett. But there you've got the top men in the sport. Cavendish ahead of Kittel, over on the right-hand side, Andre Greipel, and not far away, Brian Coquart, and in the mix as well, Peter Sagan.
Wow, it's all about getting it right. Well, poor old Bennett there, one of only a couple of Irish riders in the race. He is the sprinter, and he was right up amongst it there. For a while it looked as though Peter Sagan was going to do something, then threw on the...
Well, Well, Utah Beach has seen a dramatic finish, a nasty accident, the provisional result then. So it's Mark Cavendish gets the victory ahead of Marcel Kittel, the big favourite on the day. This is the damage though, and it was that barriers when we came into the final couple of kilometres there. So many risks being taken. I think most of the overall contenders got in there nice and safely. But I do think that rider coming in from Bora Argon, I do think it was the Irish rider Sam Bennett who went down very hard, and the first rider to go down was a Katusha rider, but the big names did manage to survive. Greipel over on the right hand side, but the Manx Missile strikes again with a perfectly timed sprint, a brilliant lead out by his man Mark Renshaw. That's enough. People question Cavendish's season this year, Phil, as to whether he was trying to do too much, but he's actually got it spot on here. I wonder what's up next, the Olympic Games.
He's got one thing he always dreamed of, and Paulie's also got himself 27 wins in the Tour de France now. He's only one short of the great Belgian Eddy Merckx. Bernard Hinault, sorry. And Hinault's places aren't as good as Mark, so Mark will go second.
That is the kick. That is all he needed, and it just goes to show he's still got that punch coming down towards the end. He really is a special guy when he gets it right. And he's been dreaming about this, and I suppose now he can not worry too much about the fact that he didn't win the British National Championships. No. He finished in second place, but he was coming off antibiotics at the time.
And there is the result. Sprinters all: Cavendish, Kittel, Sagan, Greipel. Ed Turns, watch for him. It's his first Tour de France. We knew he was fast. Laporte was in 6th place. Coquard 7th. Good result for the Frenchman. Christophe in 8th place. And the first timer from Great Britain, Danny McClay, in 9th place. What a great result for him. And the evergreen Henderson coming over the line for New Zealand in 10th spot.
The stage starts in Saint-Lô, but it makes its way through to Cherbourg on Cotentin. It's 183 kilometres. There are 3 categorised climbs within the first 52 Ks in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey, but the most significant obstacle on today's stage is the final climb through to the finish line. Category 3, it's not particularly long at just 2 kilometres, but there are some steep sections as much as a gradient of 14%. Not a day for the sprinters. Certainly not a day for the pure sprinters anyway, but Peter Sagan is amongst the contenders. Yellow jersey, all smiles for Mark Cavendish with the handlebar tape and the helmet to match. And riding at the front with the other wearers of the various leaders' jerseys for the classifications, and amongst them Paul Voss was the first to attack wearing the King of the Mountains jersey to try and get himself up the road for the first 2 climbs of the day. He managed to do so, but having been joined by 3 other riders, he missed out on the points on the first 2 climbs that have been contested. At the back of the group is the Norwegian. This is Vegard Breen at the back of the group. He won over the top of the first climb on today's stage. At the front from Trek Segafredo is Jesper Stuyven. He won over the second climb of the day. There is one more Category 4 climb to come before the climb through to the finish line. Paul Voss has lost contact with this group, and you can see he's now at 10 seconds. Here he is. They have gone all out with the bike. It's got the polka dots on it to match the jersey. He's got a teammate that is also in that breakaway. Benedetti, the Italian rider from Bora Argon 18, is with the other 2 that are ever so slightly off the front from his teammate. And you can see Benedetti with the red helmet on, sitting at the back of the group, no doubt waiting for Paul Voss, hoping that he can return. And he is almost there. And they are almost at the next climb of the day, the Côte de Montpenchon. And they are onto it, a 1.2 kilometre climb. You can see almost 6% the average gradient. Paul Voss has got his work cut out if he's any chance to claw his way back and collect the 1 point that is on offer to absolutely secure that jersey. Breen and Sturven, the two riders at the front of this group. The Norwegian with the hint of green in amongst all that black. He's on 1 point, so too is Jesper Sturven. Paul Voss is on 2 points. If one of those riders is to win the 1 point that's up for grabs here and get equal with Paul Voss, it would come down to a countback between them. But then we've got the finish of the stage as well, where there is 2 points up for grabs for the winner of the stage. Voss has almost made it back. Benedetti still sitting at the back of the group. Now the sprint is on. Breen it is who opens it up. Sturven in second spot, aiming to try and collect the extra point that is on offer to try and take the lead in the King of the Mountains classification. Well, at least get on par with Paul Voss. And Benedetti has got the job for Bora Argon 18 to try and collect that point himself, which will protect the lead of Voss. It's becoming quite a tactical affair at the front of the race. Sturven waiting patiently. He's the favourite between these riders, given his reputation for the one-day classics. He packs plenty of punch. Benedetti looks as if he's just laying off ever so slightly to try and catch them by surprise. Breen and Sturven shoulder to shoulder. Benedetti's not up to the task. And Jesper Sturven collects himself 1 more point in the race for the King of the Mountains classification. So he now moves to 2 points equal with Paul Voss, once he gets there, of course. And he almost is, as Breen has lost contact by quite some margin. The first timer in the race, and Jesper Sturven over the top of the climb in first spot. The Côte de Montpichon. Here comes Paul Voss. He now finds himself, when it goes to the countback, in second place in the race for this white jersey with the red dots, the King of the Mountains jersey. It's been a good day out for Paul Voss, as it was yesterday, getting himself in the breakaway, and just as we saw 1 day ago, doing it with another teammate with him. It was Barta yesterday from the Czech Republic. Today it's Benedetti, one of the Italian riders on this German outfit. And now it's time for a bite to eat for Jesper Sturven. A long stint from here before they get to the next obstacle of the day, which is the intermediate sprint. The intermediate sprint comes with 75.5 kilometres to go, and from this point until there we won't see much action, certainly from the main peloton. It will just be the Dimension Data squad, led here by Steve Cummings, containing that breakaway group. Mark Renshaw in the all-black colours. Another assist to be added to his great list of supporting roles for Mark Cavendish throughout what has been an extraordinary career. And Cavendish getting the chance to enjoy it with Bernard Eisel and Edvald Bosenhagen. Renshaw, Bosenhagen and Eisel have been 3 riders that have played such a big role in the career of Mark Cavendish, and he really said that it made it even more special yesterday to be able to share the moment with them. This conversation at the front is about Paul Voss and whether he is continuing to try and come across to these 3. Still 130 kilometres to race, and 4 is far better than 3. Weather for ducks today. Thomas Voeckler sitting at the back of the peloton did exactly as you forecast yesterday. Once it got frantic towards the end of the stage, he just let the race drift away from him. He conceded a minute and a half, and once we make that journey south and we get towards the Pyrenees, you could almost put the house on it that Thomas Voeckler is going to get himself into a breakaway. Steve Cummings still setting the tempo at the front for Dimension Data. We'll see a lot of Steve throughout today's stage. The squad would have been hoping that Edvald Bosenhagen would be a contender for a day like this, but you can't help but wonder how much that fall yesterday will knock out of his power resources today. And a little problem at the back of the peloton. Hopefully nobody seriously injured here. And a little exchanging of some food amongst the riders from Orica Bike Exchange. This is Michael Albacini at the back of the group, which is a rare position for him. Steph Clement calling for some service from the IM Cycling squad. This is Rui Costa from the Lamprey team, one of the favourites for the stage today. Michael Matthews is also amongst them from Orica Bike Exchange, another man spoken about as a possible winner of today's stage. And the edX Quickstep team with a whole host of riders involved. Nearest the picture in the Lamprey colours is the former world champion, Rui Costa of Portugal. And Joaquim Rodriguez, the man who won a similar stage last year, stage 3 to the top of the Mer de Huy, which is in Belgium, finds himself gingerly on the side of the road.
This is Rui Costa from the Lamprey Merida team. Arashiro, he's the man, the Japanese rider, handed off his own front wheel to team leader Costa. He's on his way and Arashiro will wait for service. And there it is, the mechanic running up, back wheel and front wheel in hand.
Marcel Kittel with the black colours on from edX Quickstep, just remounting his bike. Off to the side from edX Quickstep is also Tony Martin, who has had some horrible crashes in the Tour de France. Was that Matteo Tessato riding the opposite direction back down the course, which is actually illegal for safety reasons?
Well, one of the Tinkoff riders on the side, and I couldn't quite see who it was. We see Rick Verbrugge here, the team director of YAM Cycling, former
Contador.
Tour de France stage winner himself, and it is Contador.
He looks okay, but he looks frustrated, and that is understandable. Alberto Contador, the last 24 hours have not been kind to him. Tony Martin gives him a little pat on the back because Tony Martin has full respect for Contador, and understandably so. It's Maciej Bodnar as the other rider from Tinkoff that's waiting with Alberto Contador, powerhouse from Poland.
Well, when I saw a Tinkoff rider turn around and come back, that tells you immediately it's someone important. And in Tinkoff team, there are two important riders in terms of winning at the Tour de France, Alberto Contador and Peter Sagan. Not a good sign for Alberto. Hopefully no more damage, but when it rains, it pours.
Literally, today. The good news each time we've seen... As we return to the breakaway group of 4, they make their way through the town of Coutances. It is Jesper Stuyven at the front, followed by Casera Benedetti. It's then Paul Voss and Vegan Breen at the back of the group. So two of the teams that we saw in the breakaway yesterday have got themselves represented again, and they are both wildcard invitations to the race. Might get a chance to see the cathedral in the centre of this town shortly. And
right on cue.
Perfect. The Cathedral of Notre Dame de Coutances. It dates back to around 430, but it was then destroyed by the Normans in 866. Before, in the 11th century, it was rebuilt and sanctified on the 8th of December 1057 in the presence of the Duke Guillaume, who went on to be the future King of England some 10 years later. And throughout the church, as you look around it, there are plenty of little chapels attached to it, which show from back in a period when church was visited quite regularly and they had multiple services. It was also significantly damaged throughout the Second World War, particularly in 1944 with the D-Day landings.
Well, just watching the riders move through the town here, we saw how narrow they got. The crowds are huge, but very narrow, twisting and turning, and on cobblestones right at the top of that hill as they go through town. they're the sort of moments, although not high speed, they're always dangerous little moments for a touchdown, someone slipping out unexpectedly. That's exactly what happened to Alberto Contador yesterday, and it was dry. So today is much more treacherous, and it's all those little things, the change of the road surface, those little smaller sections and more narrow sections they have to go through. Chris Froome, he's aware of all that stuff, and of course a great example, 2 years ago, Chris Froome crashing his way out of the Tour de France, went down twice before they even reached a cobbled section that year, which was the big talking point. So Chris Froome, this sort of thing makes him really quite nervous. He hasn't got the best history in wet conditions. He'd be worried about, and his doctors will be worried about, secondary infection. So getting grit or grime in there when you're sweating, or if you happen to crash again, go down on the same wound, that can spell disaster. So Contador, I expect, will stay completely rugged up as long as possible, only taking off the rain jacket just before the final run into the line.
Alberto Contador, we had a chance to catch up with him this morning before the stage started to talk about yesterday's crash. Everybody will try and talk to him later today about today's crash. Here he is, Alberto Contador. It's a hard day. I spent a night, but I'm happy because the crash yesterday was hard, yet I'm still here this morning. This stage will be complicated because of the final. I hope I won't lose too much time because it is complicated, the finish of the stage today. Organised for his bike to be 1/2 yellow, 1/2 green.
That is quick.
It was an Eddie Merckx bike riding for the edX Quick Step team.
But it's the Tour de France. Teams, sponsors, they make a special effort because it's a unique thing when you get to wear a jersey in the Tour de France. You see it with Mark Cavendish in yellow, how emotional it made him to take that jersey for the first time in his career and also complete the set of Grand Tour leaders' jerseys. Yes, he's not winning the thing overall by the time we get to Paris, but in cycling, it's so prestigious to lead one of these major tours, one of the Grand Tours. And in the history of cycling, there are now only 19 riders who have led all 3 Grand Tours, and Mark Cavendish, since yesterday, is a member of that club.
It's a select club. Cavendish, the latest member. This is the 26-year-old Norwegian Breen, who at the national championships just a few weeks ago finished 5th in the individual time trial, 9th in the road race. Riding the Tour de France for the first time, but he has ridden the Tour of Spain in the past, so he knows what's required to get through 21 stages worth of racing. 3,535 kilometres. Surely when you're racing the Tour, you can't take a look at that total kilometre mark and say, well, this is how I'm going to approach to get to Paris. It's just that classic one day at a time at the early stages.
Sometimes it's even less than a day at a time. In the case of the sprinters who struggle in the mountains, it's a case of taking it one mountain at a time. And when you get to the bottom of a mountain, don't look up. Just keep pedaling. You'll be there eventually. It makes it worse if you look at the top because it seems never ending.
This is Marcus Burkhardt in the red colours, Bernard Eisel in the white. They're both former teammates. They used to ride together at the HTC Columbia team, or HTC Columbia High Road. And Marcus Burkhardt, when riding with that team in 2008, he managed to win a stage of the Tour de France into Saint-Etienne when he got the better of Sylvain Chavanel, who we just saw a few moments ago, back in the service of his team car. Lush green countryside, and it's no surprise it is so green when we're in the middle of summer and it's been so wet this afternoon. Here's Chavanel about to come back to the group, and the rider that he's with is Jan Bakeland. So 2 men at the back of the peloton, 3 in fact when you put Thomas Voeckler amongst them, who know what it's like to be Mark Cavendish today, wearing the yellow jersey on the roads of France.
Well, it's something that Thomas Voeckler has been able to build his career around, stints in the yellow jersey and long ones at that. He spent 1 year in 2004, 10 days in yellow, and the next time he wore it, he spent a week in the yellow jersey. The sponsors then had plenty of time to deck him out completely, yellow head to toe.
He went full yellow. His group still working well together. make their way through the town of Banville-Carretré. A church in this town of Saint-Germain-Auxerre, which is dedicated to Saint-Germain-Auxerre. Was built in 1140, roughly. That's when construction started. The city was also liberated by the 69th Regiment of the 9th US Infantry Division on June the 18th, 1944, who then installed the defence line, and the Americans stayed here until autumn of 1945. And each July they have a kite festival. And if you're riding a bike race in a town where there's a kite festival and you don't like your chances of fighting for position at the front in the crosswind, it's time to do some training early and a crash course in contending with the wind.
Or you're in the wrong town.
Or you're in the wrong town. Plenty of Belgian flags, as always, on the side of the road. And they're cheering on number 67, Jasper Stuyven, who's really been enjoying the last few seasons with this team, getting the chance to learn from the great Fabian Cancellara. Big shoes to fill when Fabian Cancellara retires for Trek Segafredo when it comes to the Spring Classics. And number 67 in the breakaway today is the man they've got their hopes pinned on.
Big shoes to fill and a lot of pressure. And on top of that, in Belgium, they've been calling Jasper Stuyven the next Fabian Cancellara. So for a young rider, that's an enormous amount of pressure. But so far, so good for Stuyven, a stage winner in the Vuelta, and the winner of Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne. So quality wins, and really discovering something new again here in the Tour de France, where he'll learn an enormous amount, but not overawed by the situation or by the occasion. Popped himself straight into the breakaway on day 2. And they're going to have to put on a pretty hard chase to catch Stuyven, but they'll be fairly aware of his talents. 63 kilometres to go, 5.5 minutes. No, it's normally not enough to stay away, but Stuyven's going to make it last a long, long time.
Winter from these three will have led the race from start to finish, if that's the way it's going to be.
And whoever wins it from this group of three, well, one of the two of the riders out of the three will be the new yellow jersey. There is Chris Froome sitting in third position, starting to move up the outside. You've got the dark blue and black jerseys of Etixx Quick-Step. I think they're the big losers on today's stage, because Julien Alaphilippe would have been a big favourite to get the victory here this afternoon. That's Alaphilippe just over to the left-hand side, but Sky very much in control.
And they appear to be chasing now, which is surprising me a little bit, unless they're trying to launch somebody. Tinkoff are moving their men up, including Contador on the far right. They're going mano a mano here. The team protected favourites are getting themselves right at the front. Hopefully not going to get caught out. The point is, they know they can lose and gain even seconds on this climb. So the favourites of the Tour are now seeking out each other so they can keep an eye on them.
Well, it's certainly now, Phil, come down to two different races. The three leaders are looking to win the stage. These are riders who are being left behind now. Daniel Tekla-Heimenot now has been dropped. He did a lot of pacemaking in the early part of this race. And this just goes to show you the kind of pressure that's being applied at the front end of this group.
It is a great finishing ride now. 8.9 kilometres to go. Watch out for the riders we think could be featuring in this race in future. Now, oh, the legs. I think the legs went there on Paul Voss, who's in that breakaway. It looks as though he slowed dramatically just at that point.
Well, you know, Phil, we talked early on about poor old Peter Sagan. We were talking about this was an ideal stage for him, but look at the speed of the three leaders. They've hit this nasty little incline now. All of a sudden, they will have 30 seconds shaved off their advantage here, just because of how tough this climb is, because the main field will not slow down when they hit this slope.
Well, there's a big crowd watching. They'll have no idea these three riders have led the race from kilometre 1. The peloton are under 10 to go now. It's about a 1.3 kilometre spread. That was the rear end of the main field there. And it's left to Paul Voss, who I think is absolutely shattered, who's keeping those pedals going round.
Yeah, I think the psychological... Look at this move
Here
now
comes,
from Stuyven.
Had to come, because he's the strongest of the three of them, and I'm not sure. Voss is digging as deep as he can. What an incredible bike rider. And it's Vegard Breen, the Norwegian rider, trying to react as well. But that gap looks a bridge too far, I think. Voss, can he get across?
Well, he looked over his shoulder there. He knew that this was the moment to react, but that was picture book perfect there, Phil. The move by Jesper Stuyven. Take that out of any handbook. That's why he was sitting at the back of the group, just waiting for the moment. He was just having a look at the other riders in the group with him. He said, right, now's the moment to go. Inside of 10 kilometres to go. That's around about 10 to 12 minutes of effort. He said, for me, that's doable.
And that's a big face there.
Right now, 8 kilometres, 1 minute 40, 1 minute 50. The damage is seriously being done at the back end of the main field, but you've still got to remain attentive because it's psychological now. And moving up to the front, Tony Martin there on the front. He's looking after Julien Alaphilippe. Alaphilippe will be thinking, well, there's a chance here to get a little bit of time back. Also looking after Nairo Quintana, riding superbly there. Quintana's in about 5th or 6th position. A climb too far for 181, and Marcel Kittel, he knew this was not his kind of stage yet this afternoon, but I am surprised to see some of the other teams really not coming forward and trying to get the advantage of a stage victory very early on. That's Alaphilippe in 2nd spot on the left-hand side.
The gap has somersaulted down to 1:39 now, but in 4.9 miles, Stuyven has made his move. Look at the BMC boys also trying to get on with Tony Martin. This now is the carnage at the back. A full day of racing, and these boys says, hey, that's enough for me.
2 nasty little climbs inside of the last 10 kilometres. All of these riders now, they realise they won't be eliminated on a stage like this, but this is survival mode. Just get themselves towards the finishing line. But you can see these climbs as we start to get into Cherbourg now. There's lots of turns left and right. Froome riding up to the front in 3rd position. That's Greg van Avermaet in 2nd position, but you know they've left it too late. It's still 1.5 minutes advantage. Ooh, that's a tricky little corner for Stuyven.
It's going to be a tricky little corner for the chase too, but he took it all of the road up there. He's corrected it, and he's driving on again. A man that's won one stage in his life in a Grand Tour. It was last year in the Tour of Spain. Started his year magnificently in his home country of Belgium with a win in one of the most famous classics, Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne.
Well, there's around about a kilometre, Phil, separating the lone leader and the men who are chasing. And this is Tony Martin here. Job done for the day. He's just decided now to put his man, Julien Alaphilippe, at the front end of the peloton and say, right, OK, youngster, you get on with it here this afternoon.
Well, BMC are trying desperately to set this one up now for Greg van Avermaet, but I think they may have left it too late. There's still those 6.5 kilometres to go. There's 1 minute 32 seconds. There's the hill as well. Chris Froome is sitting there about 5th wheel down the line, watching, waiting, keeping out of trouble. The only men he'll react to are people like TJ Van Garderen, Alberto Contador, Quintana. They're the men he's looking to move, otherwise he won't.
It's at a moment like this, Phil, when you're in a breakaway situation that you start to feel that little bit more confident. The pain was trying to see the speed that this man is hitting now. He's touching 48 miles an hour going down there. And all of a sudden, the pain that you've been in throughout the whole of the day, you can just push it that little bit further because the dream is starting to fall onto the shoulders now of Jesper Stuyven. He realises stage victory, but he also realises, hey, I've got the chance of a yellow jersey here this afternoon.
And if he wins, he will get yellow. If he wins the mountain before the finishing line, he will get the polka dot as well. And he's driving for 2 major prizes today on this 2nd day of the Tour de France, and a Belgian rider doing that. They don't win the Tour de France much these days, but now they would be delighted if they had a man in the leaders' maillot jaune tonight, that's for sure. And it's still BMC trying to put matters to rights. They've got themselves organised a little bit too late, I think. Quintana riding pretty close down there to the location of Chris Froome.
Look at the bike handling there of Peter Sagan. You know, I feel a little bit sorry for him because when you looked at the profile today, it was certainly a stage for him. The speed's 30 miles an hour almost for the leader, 40 miles an hour for the main field behind, but he's now in the outskirts of Cherbourg. Just inside of 40 miles an hour, 39 to be exact.
Yeah, but they were coming downhill. This guy's on the flat. He's still driving well, and that is a problem down there. And I can't quite see who it is who has got it.
Richie Porte.
It is Richie Porte. Of all the time to get a flat tyre, well, this might be deciding the leader on the team for this year's Tour de France, because he is losing time here, just 4+ kilometres out from the line. That is a bad tyre to puncture, bad luck.
And it's also, Phil, the neutral service vehicle who is changing the back wheel there. He's going to lose himself, I would say, close to a minute today. Back with the leader now. Stuyven is still leading this race. There are 2 chasers, and he's still a minute and a half ahead of the main field.
And he goes under the 4 kilometres to go banner. He knows the last 2 are all climbing up to the heavens, but he's got the power, this boy. Jens Voigt has predicted all throughout the day the breakaway would stay away, and I'm beginning to think he's right.
Well, I think he certainly is right here, because when you look at 4 kilometres to go, that rider, when we looked at him, every time we see him, he doesn't look like a rider showing any signs of weakness. But in the main field, there is still the importance of getting to the top of that climb, because with the overall contenders, Phil, it's also about the time that the clock stops when they go over the finishing line, because this is a moment where we start to put together the hierarchy of the overall contenders.
We are closing in on the climb of La Glacerie. It's about 400 to 500 metres, and then we climb up to the top, 1.5 kilometres from the finish. We'll go over the summit of that climb. Team Lotto have taken control at the front at the moment. BMC have had to stop racing now because they've got one of their team leaders behind with a flat tyre. Terrible bad luck for Richie Porte, the Tasmanian rider. The 2 chasers, don't forget, are still clear. Here's the start of the climb at 3 kilometres to the end of the day. It says on the left, the summit, the top, 1 kilometre. To go over the top in the lead, he becomes the king of the mountains. To go over the finishing line in the lead, he becomes the leader of the Tour de France.
Well, the leader going through 3 kilometres to go to the finish, but it's 2 kilometres, as you said, Phil, to the top of the climb where he'll get the points. There is Arthur Vichot going through in the Bleu Blanc Rouge, a champion of France. The roads are getting so very narrow here, but very shortly, once they get onto this climb, it's a little bit like a ramp. It starts off at 6 and 7%, but right in the middle, after 1.5 kilometres of going uphill, you kick up to the most steep part at 14%, and that will hurt this youngster. 24 years of age, the Belgian. All he's got to do now is just keep the tempo going. But look at the clock, it's diving down, 1:15.
That's a pain of hoping for glory. That's not a pain of about to collapse on the road. Peter Stuyven is riding superbly well here. He could stand to win 3 prizes because the referees have just announced he's voted the most aggressive rider of the day, so tomorrow he'll also wear a red number. And look at the lineup of the teams now, one after another, but they're racing, as you say, Paul, to beat each other here, not to catch him there. And they're bringing back now, first of all, Vegard Breen here. He's been brought back. He almost made it.
Almost made a podium position at the Tour de France on today's stage, but big pressure now is coming from Team Tinkoff, keeping it nice and high. And a little bit further back, look at the face there of Kirienka, just keeping the pressure high for Team Sky. Everybody realizing now seconds gained here or lost can keep your hierarchy in the overall standings. I can see the French national champion move. Look at the acceleration now coming from Tinkoff.
Tinkoff trying to sort it out. Peter Sagan is the man they'll be looking to. I don't think Contador, who fell again today on the same shoulder he injured yesterday, is going to take part in too much. They're trying to reorganize themselves here.
Dan Martin moving up into 6th position, right onto the wheel of Nairo Quintana. Nairo Quintana, the rider in the darker blue jersey there. They're all looking for position here as we start to see this big acceleration. This is Tom Jachter on the front, and he really is trying to set something up for Team Cannondale.
2 kilometres virtually to go for the man ahead. He's got 51 seconds to survive. It's basically all uphill. There is a little plateau. Oh, there's the legs have blown to the world now of Paul Vos. He gets passed by Tom Helter-Slechter, who continues to set the tempo here. The gap's tumbling down, 47, 2K out. Mark Cavendish has been unhitched. This is what we expected. His day of glory was yesterday. Today, he'll just want to get home and get that nice warm shower.
Well, not a surprise really, but you can see everybody queuing up behind the gap, dropping dramatically now. It's down to 35 seconds, and there's still 2 kilometres to go to the finish.
Virtually all uphill. It does plateau out as we go over the top of the climb. In fact, the leader is very close to the top of the climb right now. 1 mile. I didn't see the summit, but I think that, in fact, Stuyven is over the top now, so he will be the king of the mountains tomorrow.
Well, this is Richie Porte, number 91 there. Really had bad luck to have that incident where he did, because trying to get yourself back into the main field at a time like this, he really now has to limit his losses.
Paul Voss through from the front to the back in one easy movement. So close to the end of a 183-kilometre day. Wiped out by the peloton, absolutely storming up this climb. Peter Sagan, look at him in second wheel here. All he wants to do is see the leader on the road. Well, we can see him. This boy is still showing great strength on the climbs towards the line.
Well, Phil, just looking further back, I can see the yellow motorbike, the main field, are right upon him. Well, the gap to the main field is saying 57 seconds, but it certainly is not that. He has not yet got to the 1 kilometre point. The urgency now trying to appear. Look at this, hovering there, waiting for the moment to move that circle. Roman Kreuziger in first position. On his wheel is the world champion, Peter Sagan, waiting for that moment to pounce.
And 2 behind him is Alejandro Valverde. This reminds me of when Stuart O'Grady almost won after a race-long break. He was caught 500 metres from the line. And Stuyven right now would not like to remember that. He is tomorrow the king of the mountains at least. He is tomorrow the most aggressive rider of the day. Now, will he be the new yellow jersey? It's close. There's a plateau now before we go up to the line.
Well, it's so very, very close. They're getting all of the motorbikes out of the gap, and Kreuziger is really digging deep now. Round this corner, he'll take all kinds of risks. They're on him.
They're right on him. They look over the shoulders, they can see him, they can almost touch him. Is he going to make it? 183 kilometres the race. We are almost in the last kilometre of the day. He's led for all of it. Philippe is frustrated, but Sagan, the brains and the legs.
But
Contador at the back here.
Yeah, Phil, losing time. Alberto Contador, he's going to get a time gap this afternoon, and that's what all of these overall contenders were very concerned about. Bear in mind, that man in the yellow jersey at the back, out of the saddle there, is nursing an injured shoulder. He's got to nurse himself through these days. But come on, Phil, what a nail biter that was.
We feel so sad for Peter Stuyven, but what can you say? Peter Sagan, Alaphilippe, absolutely brilliant. They split the field with the effort they made coming up that final climb. It looks as though Alberto's coming in here with a reasonable loss on the day. He's had an horrendous 2 days of racing. 46 seconds and counting. We'll see what they give him on the line.
Well, don't forget, Phil, Richie Porte, who had that mechanical incident. Here's Mark Cavendish, the overall leader. He won't be surprised to relinquish.
Not bad for Mark.
Well, there he goes. Yellow jersey dream over for the moment.
Phew, and Peter Sagan, don't forget, he gets the yellow jersey, and he's never worn that before. This is an amazing tour after just 2 days of 21. The faces of the men who've come home today.
There's Wout Poels just a little bit further back over on the right-hand side. These guys have all... There's Richie Porte there, Phil. But, you know, look at the gap, Phil. It's already 1.5 minutes he's lost. It's going to be close to 1 3/4 minutes at the end of this stage. Tough luck, Richie.
2 days out of 21. One has to feel that TJ Van Garderen is now the leader of Team BMC. And Richie just shakes his head there.
Well, the day belongs to this man, Phil. World champion. He hasn't won a stage in the Tour de France since 2013. But the way he did it, the calmness that he had, he was so confident.
Yeah.
Alaphilippe, he
invited him past.
He forced him to come to the front and say, go on. He needed that little wheel to catapult himself out. What a man. This guy, there's a reason why he's the champion of the world.
Absolutely.
Well, here we get a chance here just to look in at Peter Sagan. I think the joy, I think he's very happy with that, and hopefully we can get in there just to listen in to the interview and see what he had to say. Well, I tell you what, at 10 kilometres to go, I thought it was in the bag for the breakaway group. At 5 kilometres to go, I thought it was certainly a win for Belgium and for Jesper Stuyven. Just like the Belgian soccer team as well, they got robbed down towards the end. And as we see riders continuing to come in here, some clever little time gaps on the way to the finish. 3 minutes since Peter Sagan, who at the end of the day will get his first stage victory since 2013, but also his yellow jersey. Look at this moment here. Talk about calm. He waited. He forced Alaphilippe to come forward to do the lead out. Sat in his slipstream, and then bang, he's got that big acceleration, the explosion to come out of the slipstream and prove why he is one of the most talented professional bike riders in the world. And don't forget, I mean, Alaphilippe riding his first Tour de France. He's going to come back and win plenty more stages like this, but he was beaten today by the master. Oh, just having a quick look down there, by the way, that is the Redoutable, the French submarine, the first nuclear submarine. Here's confirmation. Alaphilippe in second place, Valverde third, Dan Martin consistent in fourth, Matthews for Australia in fifth, Wilco Kelderman attentive in sixth, Galopin seventh, Greg van Avermaet in eighth place, but still paying attention in 10th place, Chris Froome. As we look down on the Cité de la Mer. Nuclear submarine just over to the right-hand side. It was originally launched in 1967. We get a chance to look at these ports, and it really is. I mean, Phil, 10 kilometres to go. I would have said that no chance that they'll catch the breakaway. 5 kilometres to go. The gap was still big enough for them to hold off, and with 3 kilometres to go, I was convinced Stuyven had it in the bag.
It's the distance, Paul. They rode alone virtually for the whole race, and the legs just couldn't face that last climb. They cracked big time. He did everything he could. He felt strong. He went exactly the right place. It was simply a matter of the legs and the body not combining when they could see the finishing line. But that's life. Alaphilippe has developed. When we were on the Tour de California with Alaphilippe, which he won, the team is still disputing the fact they'd even put him in the team for the Tour. And here he is in his first Tour de France, and he almost got the win against Sagan.
But the calmness of Sagan to slow down, he didn't want to lead the sprint out from too far. He allowed Alaphilippe to come by him. He had the confidence that he could take anybody on at that moment, and he just slipped back a fraction, got into the slipstream, and talk about the catapult effect.
That was brilliant. The Tour de France, that must be a massive satisfaction for you. Can you explain what happened in the final kilometers of this one?
I'm very surprised I won, because I was thinking in the front it's still 2 guys. And then I finish first, and I didn't know that. And just I'm here, and everybody talking about I won. Then I'm very surprised, I'm very happy. And the team today make a very big job, very good work. And Roman Kreuziger, he helped me a lot the last climb. It was unbelievable. He pulled all the climb until 500 meters, and then he was just on my legs. And everybody just came in the front after I start the sprint, and when I see that I know somebody starts. And Alaphilippe was very close to win, but I beat him in the finish.
The other good news, it may be a surprise, yellow jersey for you.
Yeah, it's very nice. First time in my career, and it's unbelievable. I'm wearing very nice jersey. I'm very happy for this. Yellow first time is also something special.
Congratulations, thank you, Peter.
Big wardrobe, Peter Sagan. He's got yellow jerseys, green jerseys. He's got the rainbow jersey of the world champion, and he was all smiles. Rightly so. 8 seconds is his buffer over Julian Alaphilippe. It's then 10 seconds to Alejandro Valverde, followed by Warren Barguil, Chris Froome, Greg Van Avermaet, Nairo Quintana, Roman Kreuziger, Simon Gerrans, and Dan Martin, all at 14 seconds. Those who suffered significant losses today, Alberto Contador conceded 48 seconds, and Richie Porte 1 minute and 44. Tough days for those two in their bid to reach the podium in Paris. Tomorrow, it's on to Angers, and it is a stage that suits the sprinters. There's just one Category 4 climb early. It's 223.5 kilometres. Expect to see Marcel Kittel and Andre Greipel looking for revenge after Cavendish got the better of them on stage 1. With Peter Sagan in the race leader's yellow jersey, the journey away from the coast and south to the mountains, it starts today. But this will be a day for the sprinters. Hello and welcome to... Granville to Angers, that is the journey today, and it is a long one. Today's stage, 223.5 kilometres. There's one Category 4 climb early in the stage. The intermediate sprint, that comes after 171 kilometres having been covered, and then it's a finish that's expected at least, unless of course a breakaway can cause a surprise. Kilometre 0, the flag coming in. Not a great deal of urgency for anybody to break away, but it didn't take too long until Armindo Fonseca launched himself off the front and has crested the one categorised climb on today's stage in first position, getting 1 point in the race for the polka dot jersey, which today it can't change shoulders because it is with the Belgian who we saw on the breakaway yesterday, Jesper Stuyven. He's on 4 points, and that 1 point that's already been collected by Fonseca is the only point available. So Jesper Stuyven has at least another day in the King of the Mountains jersey. Well, we leave Normandy and into Brittany, and this team, the Fortunato Vital Concept team, you might remember it from last year as the Breton Sachet team. This is a team out of Brittany. Fonseca is riding within just a few kilometres of his home, and he's getting the chance to show himself off in front of his adoring public. It has been a relatively slow start to the stage. 145 kilometres still remaining. The expected average speed on today's stage, the quickest expected average speed is 43 kilometres per hour. So far they've been moving along at 39 kilometres per hour. But let's not forget that that's just one rider on his own off the front. Tinkoff team at the front today protecting the yellow jersey, but not necessarily the yellow jersey that they really wanted to be protecting. The one they were hoping to protect would be in the last week with Alberto Contador. There's not a whole lot you can say to Fonseca at this point other than keep going. And two abreast back in the peloton. Even the Tinkoff team at the front with one rider from Canadel Drapac also alongside them at the front of the race is really meandering along, which is good for Alberto Contador. This works out well for the Spaniard. Such a tough day for Alberto yesterday. Another fall for the second day in a row. He conceded a little bit of time yesterday, Alberto Contador. He now finds himself at 1 minute and 2 seconds behind the race leader, but he lost 45 seconds, importantly, to the likes of Nairo Quintana and Chris Froome. 48 seconds, in fact, Alberto Contador lost, and it was 1 minute and 45 for Richie Porte. But more on that later when I'm joined by Robbie McEwen. Throughout this year's Tour de France and the with Robbie McEwen, a 12-time winner of stages at the Tour de France. And then we'll be passing over to Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin to take you through to the finish. Calling the key parts of the stage when it really matters. Here's Alberto bandaged up. Robert Kieselowski is the rider that he's alongside. Stuyven in the King of the Mountains jersey. He said yesterday he was disappointed, and it wasn't until this morning when he pulled that jersey on with the number on it that it really started to sink in that it was something quite significant. There's Michael Matthews near the front for the Orica Bike Exchange team. 5th on the stage yesterday for Michael Matthews. It really is a relaxed atmosphere within this group. This is Damiano Caruso that you can see from BMC. And Peter Sagan having a chat to a former teammate. This is Diego Rosa from Astana that he's chatting with. They were teammates together at the Italian Liquigas team. And you saw the Lithuanian national champion Navadauskas in the colours of his national jersey riding for the Canadel Drapac team. Mark Cavendish and Mark Renshaw, what an extraordinary combination those two have been. 27 stage victories for Mark Cavendish. If he wins today, he moves to equal second in the all-time record with one of the absolute greats of the sport, Bernard Hinault, who won this race 5 times. as well as 28 stages. And he comes from Brittany, Bernard Hinault, the region that we're in today, just as the stage leader, Fonseca, does. Armindo Fonseca, he lost a little bit of time yesterday. He sits in 97th position in the overall standings at 3 minutes and 6 seconds behind the yellow jersey of Peter Sagan. Well, let's have a look at what's at stake today, and from some of the experts on the race, who they think will win. Chilara looks like he's really enjoying himself in his final Tour de France. The man in the white colours from Trek Segafredo.
Well, we're thinking he might have been a bit of a chance yesterday, but we didn't see him up near the front. But certainly he'll be focusing on the stage 13 time trial to try and win that. But he's got to beat Tony Martin, not to mention Chris Froome, who's a fairly handy time trials himself. The GC riders are very good time trials, especially after 2 weeks of racing. So Fabian will have his hands full there. But we know Fabian is a bit like Rolf Sorensen, like we spoke about. It might not always perfectly suit him, but he'll find a way to try and win. And Fabian can attack at moments that you don't expect. I'd like one day to see him go for a long-range attack, like Tony Martin did a couple of years ago and won the stage by 6 minutes or so. But Fabian, he'll be enjoying his last tour.
But he has said that it's not a farewell tour, it's about performance. Peloton now make their way through the feed zone, and Owen Bell has asked the question on Twitter, instead of feed stations on the road, why don't they just feed from the team cars, thinking that it may well be safer. Part of the reason that they have these feed zones is to reduce the amount of times they need to go back to the actual team cars in an attempt to make it safer, as we see a Bidden just go through into the peloton and Ron Dennis having a wave to the camera. Part of the rationale for having the feed zone is so as when the team cars are at the back of the peloton in that big convoy, they're only getting called up for mechanical problems that are far more important, far more urgent than a feed. A feed can wait another 5 minutes if need be, but a mechanical problem to get fixed or a rider who's crashed, they want to try and reduce the amount of traffic clutter directly behind the peloton for those priorities as opposed to the feeding. And by having that feed zone, they reduce the amount of times a car needs to come up.
It also condenses that feeding period into the space of about 1 kilometre or so, rather than teams deciding when they want to go back and get bags. And look at it this way, if one rider was sent back to get feed bags, there's 8 other feed bags apart from his own that he has to carry, 2 full Biddens, the cakes, the bars, the gels, etc. He'd be required to carry all those bags, the volume that is, it's just huge, end up being nearly the size of a suitcase and weighing in excess of 16, 18 kilos. So too much of an ask. Do it yourself in one spot. And the peloton mostly will always slow down, take it easy, make sure everyone can get where they need to be, because there's often a lot of chopping and changing of position as they're trying to get to their team soigneur who's holding and handing out the bags. You see Marcus Burkhardt take on bags there for BMC, and he's taken on more than one, and that's what riders will do. They'll take one for the team leader or for sometimes a teammate who can't get across. So Marcus Burkhardt, perfect example of that. The riders will replenish what they've already eaten, what they've emptied out of their pockets. They'll put the cakes, the bars, the gels. They'll throw off the Biddens that are finished or almost finished. And that's why the fans seem to make a rush towards the feed zone, try and get themselves a souvenir. But I would like to see the feed zones as an exclusion zone for fans as well, because it can get so treacherous in there when people are trying to duck onto the road to get themselves a souvenir and the riders are trying to get themselves organised. It's an unnecessary danger.
And the Église de Notre Dame, a local church, which was founded in the 11th century, much like the castle the chateau that we just had a chance to take a look at. Built in the classic Brittany style throughout the back end of the Middle Ages.
And they're just brilliant, these aerial shots that we're getting over some of these villages. You'd never get the impression of what it's really like from the ground. It does look good, but from the air, when to get an overview of all of that, and these churches just magnificent. And just down the road we have another one, L'Église de Saint-Martin.
It's only the bell tower that remains from what was the original church. They've got 5 big bells in there, and the biggest one weighs some 4,000 kilograms. That's a big bell.
the mind boggles that back when that church was built, how on earth that they could hoist it up to where they got it without the modern machinery that we have now. So they're an architectural masterpiece.
And very little occupational health and safety.
True. And often these churches took decades to build. Sometimes they were started in one century, not finished until skip one, go to the next one.
From Craig Murphy about the bikes, wanting to get some insights on the technology as we take a look at Adam Yates and Christopher Yule Jensen at the back for the Orica Bike Exchange team. There's become a point within cycling that once you spend over a certain amount of money, you can't get a bad bike. But one of the big discussion points that has happened
But you can still get bad riders on those good bikes.
It all comes down to the person sitting on top ultimately.
Whatever the bike is, you still got to push the pedals.
This is absolutely true, but the earlier part of the year we saw disc brakes being used, but they've been ruled out as a result of an accident earlier on this year. And your view on the disc brakes?
I never felt the need to have any more braking power than I already had. I had no problem with the conventional brakes, but some riders do feel that they may be able to stop with a little bit more control. But until they're just right, they don't need to be in the peloton. And then taken out after Paris-Roubaix after that horrible injury during Paris-Roubaix to one of the riders from Movistar, sliced him open up the front of his shin. What they're looking at doing now is taking the disc rotor itself, and where that's been machined, the edges are sharp like a knife. They're talking about rounding those edges off. So if they can do that, it's possibly safe enough to be reintroduced into the peloton. The only other thing then is if there's been long continuous braking on a downhill, then there is a crash or someone has a puncture, there's always the risk of burning yourself on that disc rotor. They get extremely hot. I don't think they're where they need to be just yet. People have said, well, why don't they build something like a plastic cowl around it to protect riders from the disc itself? It's also easier said than done. There's still quite a bit of work to be done before a successful introduction into the pro peloton.
This is the Chateau de Rocher-Sévion, which was built in 1410. The Rocher part referring to the hill that it was built on, and the Sévionnet is the family that built this chateau, and it is still owned by descendants of that family, and it dates back to 1410. So that is quite some heritage and some responsibility. I wonder if the locals, if the owners realise that they're being broadcast on the Tour de France and aware of the helicopter that's just hovering over the top of them. Clearly they're home, as there's two cars in the driveway. Nice swimming pool out in the backyard. This is a beautiful private property. You can only imagine the pitch on a real estate website to try and sell this. Extraordinary history in the one family effectively since 1410. And they've got the lake not too far away. Andre Greipel, the German national champion. Another one of many riders who looks as if he's enjoying himself. Three Germans at the front, in fact. Markus Burkhardt, Andre Greipel, and the very tall Marcel Seeberg. They'll be looking forward to the start of the Tour de France next year when it starts in Germany. Was that the Irish flag that we just caught a glimpse of? Armindo Fonseca looks as if he's trying to up the tempo a little bit now, and he is extending his lead ever so slightly. It's out to 4 minutes and 25 seconds. At one point.
Well, a fantastic portrait of a great young French rider, and I wouldn't call him just a young French hope for the future because he's doing it already. Winner of the Tour of California. We saw him bang his handlebars in frustration. Yes, at running second. He ran second at La Flèche Wallonne, but he's got time on his side, and I'm sure we'll see him on the top of a lot more podiums in the future. Also great to see him showing his personality, not afraid to put it out there and have fun, and exciting young rider, Alaphilippe.
After the stage yesterday, he said, people tell me I should be happy. It's my first Tour de France and I finished second, but... and then just trailed off. He's not happy. He is a natural-born winner. And for as fun as he is, and you could see that in the way he smiled at the camera, engaged with the spectators, he's really disciplined. Because instead of going through the normal amateur clubs in France, he went through the amateur military team and spent some time in the military while everybody else was at university. And the guy that was the coach there was Sandy Cassar, and said that he follows instruction really well. This is Thomas Voeckler. He's had enough of meandering along, and it is Mr. TV time, and Thomas Voeckler is saying au revoir to the peloton.
Well, I wonder if they're going to let him go. What I was going to say before about also letting Fonseca go out a little bit more, that also discourages from anyone trying to cross the gap if it gets too small. It's now at 5.5 minutes, and Thomas Voeckler, well, he doesn't do anything by the book. He's decided it's time I get myself out there. I mean, his tongue has been just raring to go since this tour started to get itself a bit of camera time. So they have let him get off the front of the bunch. They're still sitting up, not overly concerned. They're also not too worried about letting him go, but they should think back just a few years to 2009. He made a move late in the race. The break stayed away, and he won the stage, foiled the sprinters.
He even waved goodbye. And you can see the red strip around each of his sleeves. That carries the name of Romain Guillaume, a young Frenchman who hailed from Angers, who was killed in a training accident in March and rode for the Vendée development squad for the Direct Energy team, the team that Thomas Voeckler came through, and they are paying their respects to him today. Today is a tribute from Direct Energy to Romain, and Thomas Voeckler is going about it the Thomas Voeckler way.
They want the best equipment they can get, but they're all very good. It comes down to what suits the team, what suits the sponsors, what the sponsor wants to profile themselves as, who they want to align themselves with, maybe depending on nationality for one thing. We see the Look bicycles with the French teams mostly, and they're here with Fortunato Vital Concept. It also depends on how much the manufacturer can afford to pay the team to have them on the bikes, because it's an incredibly strong advertising tool. And that's not lost on the manufacturers, and they're happy to stump up the money. The manufacturers are the sponsors themselves, as we see with Team Cannondale Drapac, with Team Trek as well. So they tend to find each other, and the biggest teams with the best riders who stand on the podium the most get the most approaches from manufacturers to get on their equipment, and that's where the deals start to happen.
And then so often the manufacturers don't so much associate themselves with the team, but with a particular rider. And you see Specialized have really attached themselves to Peter Sagan and also Alberto Contador, and for a long time Tom Bonin, as much as they are with the team.
Well, talking about the rumour mill, Matt, and manufacturers aligning themselves with riders, a lot of talk about where Peter Sagan might go next year after Tinkoff pulls out of the sport at the end of the year. It is rumoured again that Specialized will stay with Peter Sagan wherever he goes, and that could bump a team up a level or two into the World Tour. And the rumour is that the Bora team will go on to become possibly Bora, Hansgrohe with Specialized as a bike sponsor, and Peter Sagan as their big name marquee rider. It's all rumours, but that's the sort of thing that's circulating within the cycling world at the moment. So a lot of interesting conversations and stories.
For a brand, the power of a big personality. Think back to the mid-1980s, and if you were a shoe manufacturer, were you better off sponsoring the American Olympic team or Michael Jordan?
Exactly.
Where would you get more bang for your buck?
Air Jordan.
And you've gone a long way to putting Nike firmly on the map everywhere. It would have got there anyway, but as a branding ploy, to be associated with the brand of Michael Jordan was genius. Tom Reynolds on Twitter has declared this as the first unofficial rest day. But even though they're meandering along at 33.5 kilometres per hour, Robbie, it's going to be more than 6 hours in the saddle today, so you're still tired. It's not a rest day on the couch. It's still a rest day on the bike, and they'll be hard on the pedals in the last 30 kilometres. This is a quick bridge into the gap. Thomas Voeckler has already reached Fonseca, and Fonseca, he might just want to have a conversation for 30 seconds. He's had nobody to talk to all day, and Voeckler straight on through and setting the agenda with Fonseca.
Well, this is the fastest we've seen Fonseca ride since the moment he got away. But Thomas Voeckler really bridged that gap quickly, but it just shows how quickly it can go when the rider in front, Fonseca, really just cruising like he's on a recovery ride, and Thomas Voeckler going into time trial mode the moment he went off the front of the peloton. Almost 6 minutes to gap, 5:47 at the moment. So it also shows not how fast also how fast Vauclair is riding, but how slow the peloton has continued to ride over the last 10 or 15 minutes, while Thomas Vauclair has been bridging this gap across to our lone leader. They are now 2 with 82 kilometres to go, 5.5 minutes. So the gap was up around 6. I'm getting the impression that the peloton has now picked up the pace. A team has gone to the front to set some sort of tempo because they don't want things to get out of hand. They've grown to know Thomas Vauclair very well. Give him an inch, he'll take a mile.
Literally, he's done it in the past. Thomas Vauclair has an outstanding career. Almost 20 days in the yellow jersey. And now Lars Bak comes to the front of the peloton. They've seen how quickly Thomas Vauclair has managed to go across. Lotto Soudal, all of a sudden, they're upping the tempo. They've got one of the favourites for the stage, Andre Greipel, hoping to go better than his 4th place finish on stage 1. Well, this has changed the complexion of the race. Still talking, Thomas Vauclair. He does that well. He does it a lot. He's always very vocal when he's in a breakaway, trying to encourage everybody to work.
Captain, coach, but really riding for the glory of Thomas. But he really does coach his fellow breakaway companions quite the same way that Jacques Durand used to do back in his day. We saw him win Tour de France stages, even the Tour of Flanders in a long solo break back in 1992. But it's really important when someone has the experience of making moves like this work, that they share that, they go and coach the others into that, tell them what they need to be doing when they need to be doing it. And at this moment, 80 kilometres to go, just 4 minutes 41, which shows the peloton is now coming into action. They're really not wanting Vauclair to get too far up the road, but Vauclair's saying from this moment on, head down, bum up, we've got to go with everything and just see what the peloton allows us to do, because that's what it comes down to.
L'Aubraye is the small little village that the 2 leaders, Fonseca and Vauclair, are making their way through. It looks as if Vauclair's Direct Energy team car is trying to get past the peloton now and go through to the front. This is Mathieu Bodnar on the front. In 2nd position is Julien Vermont. In 3rd spot is Lars Bak. Julien Alaphilippe was the 2nd place finisher on the stage last year, one of the rising stars of French cycling, and he is an excitement machine. We had a piece on him a little bit earlier on, but he also spoke to him before the start of today's stage. Here he is.
It was
a big disappointment when I crossed the line, but it's behind me now. And it's Peter Sagan who is in front of me, so it's a good lesson. It's my first tour, so I have a lot to learn. And it's true that it's a little bit frustrating to miss such an opportunity, but at the end I gave everything to win, and the best guy won. Well, they got the consolation prize in some respects with the white jersey at Julien Alaphilippe, and he was in 6th position overall at the Criterium de Dauphiné recently. And that's a clear indication. The French, understandably so, are excited about his prospect to be a contender for the white jersey here, and perhaps one day a podium place, maybe even to win the race overall. Of the generation that is slightly older than him, the rider that he reminds me of is Alejandro Valverde. There's not much he can't do, but is he good enough to win the big one?
Well, he's very versatile. He's good enough to win the Tour of California, which he proved in May. Very close second to Peter Sagan the year before. He won the mountaintop finish, but Sagan overhauled him by staying just close enough in touch and then winning the final stage, taking the time bonus. But Alaphilippe, good in similar races to Valverde. Flèche Wallonne, where Valverde beat him this year into 2nd place. Whether he can be a contender for over 3 weeks, big question, big ask. You'd have to have a crystal ball to know, but I think he's maybe not quite GC rider enough to pull it off. But if he has the form of his life at the right time, you never know. He could squeak onto the podium one year, but I wouldn't be putting my money on it. More on the classics: Liège, Bastogne-Liège, Flèche Wallonne, Amstel Gold, week-long stage races, Giro de Lombardia at the end of the season. I think he's more that type of rider.
Thomas Vauclair and Armendio Fonseca about to head through this intermediate sprint. 20 points up for grabs for the first rider through, 17 for 2nd place. And Thomas Vauclair stretching the legs is allowing Fonseca to go through and collect the points. Some respect for the man who's been in the breakaway all day long.
Well, hang on, we're still 500 metres out from the sprint. Maybe Vauclair's just lining him up and just making sure he's got him under control and then go over the top of him. Just laying off him ever so slightly, Tomo, looking up the road. It would surprise me if Vauclair didn't go and take it.
Thomas Vauclair is a man who likes prizes, and he's got the applause, rightly so. The French public, they love him. Understandable, he provides plenty of entertainment. A stellar career in his 14th participation in the tour.
Right, he's not going to go.
You got the huff and the puff about him, but he's not going to blow Fonseca's house down. Fonseca stretching the legs just to make sure, and he collects himself 20 points in the race for the green jersey. The sprint in 1 minute, though, that'll be a lot more frenetic. It won't be full noise, but it'll be much quicker than that one.
Nice gesture from Vauclair there to let Fonseca go through and take the points. Take that €1,000 prize money as well to share with his teammates and the staff. Because let's face it, Fonseca's been out there all day. He really deserves to get some sort of reward. Might get the most aggressive. As we look back to the wind-up for the sprint, and it's Etix's quick step for Marcel Kittel. Alexander Kristoff there in 4th position in the red. Behind him, Peter Sagan. And in the green skin suit, Mark Cavendish. Andre Greipel behind him.
Sabatini is the last to peel off for Etix's quick step. It's Kittel now with his nose in front. Cavendish coming from a long way back, but it's Kittel who's got enough. Kittel ahead of Kristoff, Sagan, and then Cavendish. It wasn't an all-out sprint, but it was a good leg tester.
And looking at the gradient there, very similar to what they're going to be presented with at the finish here. So Marcel Kittel will draw confidence that he held them off at ease, really. Didn't look to be making a massive effort. Everyone sort of doing a 80% sprint, I would call it. No one really wanting to burn themselves too much, because an uphill sprint like that really pumps the lactic acid into the muscles.
What has just caught my attention is the presence of Michael Matthews in the Orica Bike Exchange colours, directly behind Alexander Kristoff in red. And Michael Matthews has got some ambitions. There's a nature break, and Mark Cavendish is just stretching the legs. This will be the last chance for them to get any sort of nature break in. A little bit of recuperation. 57 seconds to the 2 leaders. It's almost time to really start racing.
A surprise for me to see Matthews up there. Wasn't really amongst it in the sprint. We saw the big name sprinters, Kittel, Kristoff, Sagan, Cavendish and Greipel. Matthews behind that, but just nipping away a few points. But said before the Tour de France, I'm not going for green. We're not bothering because Simon Gerrans and I are sharing leadership responsibilities. But maybe just a warm-up for the legs and to have a go today. Just get things moving.
Hungry?
I'm looking forward to another little snack.
It's going to become a battle, we feel, between the white jersey of Andre Greipel and the jersey of Marcel Kittel. And
one jersey that won't change today, Phil, is the polka dot jersey, because Jesper Stuyven, after that brilliant, exciting finish yesterday, and I think all of Belgium was trying to blow him up that hill down towards the end, got caught 450 metres before the end. Well, he's got no challenge today. There was only 1 point in the King of the Mountains competition out on the course, so well done, Jesper.
Well, on this day, the 4th of July, how do they think of everything? But they do. It's the very steep hill to the top of the Minehead, by the look of it, down there. As these 2 riders still continue on the way. They'll be worried about Thomas Vauclair. He really enlivened the race when it got to look as though we're all going to go to sleep and finish tomorrow morning. But now it's going extremely quickly. Vauclair doesn't look like it, but he's actually riding at around 40 kilometres an hour right now.
It's always very deceptive when you're the armchair teammate here, sitting at home with a coffee in your hand, and you look at these guys. It looks like a nice ride through the park on a Sunday morning. Well, they are riding at around about 27 miles an hour, 44 kilometres an hour over this last hour of the race. You might think that that's a little bit bad for the environment, but I'll tell you one thing, the sticky bottle there that was taken on board, well, he didn't even take that one. I obviously didn't like the content.
Not sticky enough.
There are 2 different kinds of things that get handed up in that bottle, by the way. Heads, and more than anything else, the real cold water bottle at this point of the game wakes you up a little bit, especially when you might have been going to sleep in the early part of this stage with the slower pace that we've seen today.
Jens Voigt, 17 times a Tour rider. Jens Does Thomas do this to sort of break the monotony, or what?
Reopen the race, everybody will try to go for a stage win, try to go for another breakaway. So do not want to catch him. So people in the front, they're acting smart. They're just trying to save energy, go as slow as they can without getting caught. And then you're going to see a drag race in the last 20 kilometers and the last, whatever, 10, 15 miles, where then everybody like speeds up. The front guys try to stay out, the peloton tries to catch them. But until then, I think we're not going to see anything. But something else, maybe an interesting fact. I heard you talking about the bottles. The last time I did the Tour de France, we had, believe it or not, biodegradable bottles. So if we throw them out in the free landscape there, they're going to become earth within like 1 or 2 years.
Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't know that.
Well, that's a good reason for bringing Jens here along.
Absolutely.
The things that he teaches us.
Boy, you're clever, Jens. And you threw them all away, I suppose, didn't you? He's gone. 48 seconds. Well, we'll see. They are trying to just keep them under control without rushing at them. There's the mine in the distance, and that was why the village was showing us that piece of art on the field there. They've got the tempo rhythm now. It's 46 seconds. They're very, very close. And in this region, we are getting long straight roads as well now. It's not a simple finish line today. It is, we think, a perfect sprinter's line, but it is gently uphill. So it means you must get your sprint team to judge your delivery to the line with perfection.
Well, Phil, just a quick run through the final 5 kilometres. There's a couple of roundabouts between 5 and 4 kilometres to go, but then after that, it really is an ideal wide boulevard approach. You have to pop across the River Main, which comes at around about 1.5 kilometres to go, but they're big, wide boulevards. And then it's slightly uphill until you turn into the Boulevard Maréchal Foch. And that corner is around about 350 metres to go, but you don't see the finishing line until you actually sweep around that final right-hand bend.
And it's just on a little rise.
It is theoretically, I think that's the kind of rise that actually suits the power of a man like Andre Greipel, but it depends on how slowly how much they get slowed down coming into the right-hand sweeper. But as all of the sprinters talked to us before the start of the stage, it really is very much all about the charge into that final corner. It's all about positioning, and it's all about holding the line of the man in front of you to make sure your team lead out gets you to that corner, and then you take over responsibility. Well, it's inside of 40 seconds now. It's really pretty much coming under control of the main field as we pop through the small town of Segré at 43 kilometers to go. We're not far from the River Oudon. That's the River Oudon just over on the right-hand side there. It's a 100-kilometer river which flows into the department of the Mayenne and the Maine-et-Loire. It's one of the largest tributaries on the right bank of the Mayenne and crosses 25 municipalities. There's the leaders over on the left-hand side. They've just turned left and they're heading now down. We've been travelling mainly today in a southeasterly direction. When we left the region of La Manche yesterday, it looked very much as if they were going to have a roaring tailwind, but the wind this afternoon has not been very much more than 6 or 7 kilometres an hour. Chance to see a little bit of the local sculptures as Thomas de Gent comes onto the front. Sitting in the second, this is really a big day for Andre Greipel, and when I spoke to the team management before the start of the Tour this year, they said that Andre this year and even last year all of a sudden seems to have changed psychologically. He had maybe inhibitions before about Cavendish, about Kittel, but now he's really come into his own and he's a much more confident sprinter. Thomas Voeckler still in the lead. And they really are beginning to yo-yo now. 40 seconds for these two leaders. Fonseca had a great day out. He rode around about 60, 70 miles away from his hometown of Rennes. That's the town where he was born. And he had a lot of supporters out on the course. And look at the smiles on the faces of these riders now. Wilco Kelderman, by the way, from Lotto Jumbo. He wasn't far away from the front end of the race yesterday. But you can see the man they're looking after right now. If you look at the yellow jerseys of Lotto Jumbo, there's a red, white and blue. It's not the champion of France. It's actually the champion of the Netherlands. because Dylan Groenewegen is their sprinter. He was involved in the accident on the first day of racing, but given a chance today, he is a new big sprinter, and he could be ready to write his name into the history books of the Tour de France today. Any other race in the world, Michael Moorcock would have abandoned. He would have said, "I will call it a day." But this is different. This is the Tour de France, and he just wants to nurse himself. That every rider feels at the Tour de France, if I can get through this stage, I'll be better tomorrow. If I can get through tomorrow's stage, I'll be better the next day. And that's why they fight to stay in the Tour de France. It's the most special race of the whole season.
It is the race of the world of cycling. These boys know it, and that's why Thomas Voeckler may lose today, but we'll talk about him as much as the winner tomorrow.
Well, at 10 kilometres to go, it's going to take them 12 to 13 minutes, and that's what Thomas Voeckler is thinking. More important, I mean, it's amazing. We're talking about the sprinters, but look at the job that was done on the right-hand side there. Team Sky, they've been sitting there on the right-hand side for the last 30 kilometres, just keeping Chris Froome to the front, making sure that he's not involved in any kind of damage.
Another 15 kilometres knocked off, and these two boys are still clear, and the gap pretty much about 15 seconds lost in 15 kilometres. Doesn't tell us a lot, really, not when you see the peloton about to come under the 10-kilometre banner. It's a desperate situation. They're trying not to catch the two leaders just now.
Well, I'm going to throw another team into the mix there, Phil, because I just noticed it's actually rather difficult, because the team that just changed the colours of their jersey is Orica Bike Exchange. And every time I look at them, I keep thinking, oh, it's Movistar coming to the front to look after Nairo Quintana. But they are wearing the yellow helmets because their team is leading the team classification. Now, they have moved to the front, and they're probably thinking there's a possibility of their man Michael Matthews getting up there today, because it is a slightly uphill finish, and it's all about being in a good position for the final run into the line. It's interminable trying to close down these final few seconds for the main field, but it's also interminable for Thomas Voeckler. But these two guys, they will not give up.
A look over the shoulder by Fonsek. The last time we saw peloton 213 kilometres ago, when they pulled the flag in to start the race. Voeckler there just asking the spectator to stay tight off that corner, because they're going to shave the grass edges now. It can't be much longer. And watch out too for the of Voeckler, his teammate Brian Coquard, because according to all the stories, he's going to be led out for the line by his teammate Angelo Tulik, who lives in Angers. There's Kittel down there in the pack as well. Everybody just dodging. They're all pretty near the positions they want to be in at this stage.
You can now start to see the big teams of the sprinters getting themselves organised. And you were talking about Brian Coquard's team. Well, it's the team of Thomas Voeckler as well, and that's the team over on the left-hand side in that black jersey with the yellow circle on. Voeckler said, "Okay, let's get out of the way now. We'll hand it over to the guys who are going to take the risks." You've got the organisation now of Marcel Kittel's Ethics Quick-Step. They're in the black and blue jerseys on the right hand side. You're starting to see the Quebec Dimension Data team coming forward in the white jerseys up through the middle. You've got Lotto Jumbo coming forward as well. Groenewegen is their sprinter. He's the champion of Holland. Right through the middle though as well. It's interesting to see that the team from Australia, the Orica Bike Exchange team, are also now getting themselves lined up.
Well, Direct Energy, that was the team of Brian Coquard. And we've heard that Tulik, the man who lives in Angers, will be his last lead-out man to the line. He has won on this finishing line, but not in the Tour de France. He's had 13 wins for France. He would finish the day off nicely. His team have now taken control of the head of the peloton. That would be a surprise, but he's going to give it his best shot.
But they are still all queuing up behind him. We're looking for the next banner. 3 kilometres to go. That's about 3.5 minutes of effort. You've got to keep calm though at a moment like this. You can see Tony Martins, the first rider from Ethics Quick-Step in the black and blue jersey there. He has got serious firepower, and he knows he's got 3 teammates behind him, but he's waiting for the moment when he can open up the gas and maybe pace this whole main field for a good kilometre or so. But there's another big, look at this, looking for the right side of the road. They squeeze out the Lotto Soudal lead-out train there. Those are the riders in the red jerseys over behind them now.
Now on the left, it's Dimension Data. They're beginning to try and steer the green jersey of Mark Cavendish up as they get control at 3 kilometres out. Peter Sagan in the yellow jersey is switching around, searching for wheels just now. He's going to have to make the most of other people. He seems to be looking at Ethics just now.
Well, that looks like Janssen van Rensburg on the front for Dimension Data, but now all of a sudden Cofidis are getting involved in the mix. They used to have a great sprinter, Nasser Bouhanni, who didn't start the Tour de France because of injury, but they may well be looking after their bearded sprinter, Gerard Soupé. But it's now Fabian Cancellara coming up to the front end of the peloton too, but Dimension Data now starting to wind it up. That's Dimension Data coming to the front. I'm looking back to see where Cavendish is. In fact, he's losing the back wheel of his lead-out train, and he's getting boxed in. You've got to be patient though. You've got to not panic at a moment like this and wait for the calm to come back to the main field and hope that the door is going to open up in front of you.
Well, also for Trek Segafredo there, it looks as though, oh, there's another nasty split that always makes us jump out of our seat. A massive crowd shot. Left-hander, somebody's gone straight on the corner. It looks like it might well be the Orica riders, because they've got the yellow helmets, thank heaven. That was an Orica rider overshot the left-hander.
Dodgy corner. This is the last dodgy corner now. It really starts to widen up into the big boulevards. You can see over on the left-hand side, though, no panic. That's Marcel Kittel a little bit further back. But for the moment, advantage Marcel Kittel, Ethics Quickstep and Dimension Data. They've still got 4 riders. I can see Edvald Bosenhagen, just 2 riders in front of Mark Cavendish, has moved up into 4th or 5th position. You've got to keep the pace nice and high now, Phil, because if you start to slow down at a moment like this, you get swamped. Not very far away either. Over on the left-hand side, I can see Michael Matthews there in the yellow helmet. Behind him, it's Andre Greipel in the white jersey. The yellow jersey still there too. Peter Sagan over the river.
Over the main and now heading in towards the finishing line. Michael Matthews, it was his teammate that didn't make it round the bend. Well, Greipel thinks he's got it. Cavendish thinks he's got it. We'll wait and see. But boy, that was close.
It's all about getting the confidence. Cavendish stops very quickly there, looks across at his former teammate, Andre Greipel. I do believe, Phil, that was on the line. It went to Cavendish and he's waiting. He's waiting for confirmation as we are. I can hear the French, Phil, shouting photo finish.
Oh, look at this. Cavendish on the line for me. Well, that gives him the second highest number of stage wins in the history of the sport. He won't believe Dougie Ryder, his manager. He's waiting. Look at Greipel on the left. Hand goes up, claiming it.
But that's not a sign of a man who's convinced.
It's not.
It's kind of maybe. Cavendish is the same. Watch this again. You can see Coquard just on the right-hand side, but Cavendish waiting. He's got that explosion that he had a number of years ago, and it's this track lunge, this lunge for the line, perfectly timed lunge that got him the win.
We promised everyone a brilliant sprint today with the best finishers in the world. They had to judge it right up this climb. It is a climb, by the way, and I think it's shaded by Mark Cavendish. His 28th historical victory in the Tour de France.
I don't think he's been told definitely that he's won. We've seen the photo finish and we give it to Mark Cavendish, but we have to wait for the officials. Well, we're just watching it from the sofa, if you like. I don't think there's any question there, Phil.
Normally not, but you know, it's when the wheel touches that black line. They're saying, and this is it, just under 6 hours today, Cavendish gets his victory over Andre Greipel. Brian Coquard tried, he was 3rd. Peter Sagan was 4th, and Ed Toons came up late, but he finished 5th. Wow. Now we'll have to wait and see. But if it is the victory, it's the 28th victory for Mark Cavendish, and that puts him number 2 in the rankings of the Tour.
Wait for the official announcement. Let's have a look at it again. The lunge for the line, and it was just that. I suppose it's the track experience of Mark Cavendish. Knows exactly how to throw his bike. Look at this one more time. 2 great sprinters on the left, Andre Greipel. On the right, Mark Cavendish. Win number 20. Cavendish puts his hand in there. Greipel puts his hand in the air, but he wasn't 100% convinced there. And Cavendish goes, yeah, well, maybe.
touchant les gars, toujours touchant. Attention ici. Bon, et on peut les gars. Hop. On écarte, s'il vous plaît, on recule.
Well, there's Steve Cummings coming up alongside. Well done, mate, he says. They did a great job. And Mark Renshaw, once again, the Australian on this squad, was in the second position. He's swinging off there on the right-hand side in the white jersey. But it was this charge to the line for Mark Cavendish. He's still got that incredible kick. And as he throws it forward here, he beats his former nemesis there and former teammate as well. And as you can see, Brian Coquard, the Frenchman, 24 years of age, a good position by him. As we see Turns just over on the far side, rounding out the top 5.